Good morning. This is a regular meeting of the Cameron County Commissioners Court. It is the 14th day of February 2013. As we do all meetings, we will start with a brief moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the U.S. flag and the Texas flag. And I'd like to ask Commissioner Sanchez to lead us in the two pledges, since he is an expectant father once again. So if you do that after our moment of silence. Thank you, Commissioner.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I honor the Texas flag and pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Public comments?
Judge, I would like to, I don't know if Javier is in the audience, but I know that he's a proud father this morning. His wife delivered a baby about 2:10. Mia Leticia, so congratulations to the mother and the father.
Congratulations to Mr. Mendez.
I concur.
Any other public comment?
Judge, one comment. This morning, a friend from San Benito passed away a few days ago, Mrs. Maria Luisa Alvarez, and she had the pleasure of having served for the U.S. government for the longest period of time of any governmental employee in the United States, is my understanding. She worked for the U.S. government for 67 years.
Wow.
Started at the Pentagon as a youngster. She never was married, but she has a lot of family in San Benito. And this lady continued her employment through the draft board, through all these processes, and retired in 2009 because she couldn't drive herself to work anymore at the age of 89, I believe. And she passed away a few days ago, but it's not often that I would walk, or she would walk into my pharmacy once in a while, and she would say, I talked to Mr. Veneman, or I talked to Mr. And I couldn't figure out what she was talking about. Well, she worked for the Agriculture Department, and it was the Secretary of Agriculture that would call her on a regular basis to see how she was doing. And this went on through 4 different Secretaries of Agriculture in the time she worked with the government. So, we lose these people that have had long commitments of service to all of us in many different posts, and I just want to remember her in everyone's prayers and thoughts, and remember the family. She'll be laid to rest this morning at 10 o'clock, and I'm sorry I cannot be there for the family, but she was a great friend, a great lady, and most importantly, a great citizen of the United States.
Thank you, Commissioner. One other I failed to mention during our moment of silence, just prayers for Mr. David Mendez, who is in Houston right now taking care of some health issues. So along with the moment of silence, please extend your prayers to him and his family. Thank you. I'm going to take one thing for now out of order regarding it's item O.
Judge, before you do that, I want to just,
yes, sir.
Since public comment, happy Valentine's Day to all.
Did you bring already flowers?
Well, I was going to plant some outside so they'd be around all year long.
Yeah, that'd be the day. Okay. All right. Item O, discussion and possible action regarding the creation of a new county court at law probate court. I've asked our county court at law judges. Oh, I'm glad to see all 3 of them are here. I met with them, I guess about 10 days or so ago regarding this court, and I wanted them to basically come forward, and I asked them what I thought we could do in terms of creating the court, and some issues are going to come up regarding when it would begin, where we're going to house them, and how we're going to have to pay for it. And so I just kind of brought them in. I think we all agreed during our meeting, I want to see a nod of heads, yes, about what, how we can proceed forward, and just know that the court is supporting of one probate court to be established effective 2015. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, sir. Dave.
Okay. each of the county courts has a probate jurisdiction. Probate jurisdiction is a law of inheritance, law of wills, things of that nature. Along with the probate jurisdiction, you're dealing with mental commitments, guardianships, and things of that nature. All of us, our dockets primarily handle criminal cases, misdemeanor criminal cases. I would say the probate docket is less than 15% of our docketing on a weekly basis, monthly basis.
Of each of you, right?
For each of us. There's about, I believe the statistics are about 7,000 criminal cases as opposed to.
We've given you a handout which basically shows what counties have these probate courts, number one, number two, what a probate court does, and number three, the numbers of cases that we handle, criminal, civil, probate, mentals, and that kind of shows how many we disposed of. It gives you an idea of what kind of work we have, how much you streamline a lot of the work that we do.
Each of us feels that a probate court, a specialized probate court, would assist the county and the county courts. For this particular reason, the probate jurisdiction is very specific. It has a specific group of attorneys, and because of our increasing criminal volume, each of us takes on, I'd say, between 75 to 100 new criminal cases each week. Okay, that's each one of us. So you're talking about 300 new criminal cases each week. With the probate court, what you'd be doing is allowing one probate individual, a probate judge, handle this particular docket and be able to focus on the needs of a growing and aging population when it comes to wills and the laws of inheritance. If you have any additional questions,
Yeah, I think when we visited 10 days or so ago, one of the discussions was the space, and we
Yes.
talked about, a lot of things occurring if we happen to get some buildings that we're trying to acquire that's close to this courthouse, moving with that, maybe freeing up some space on the Harrison Street side, maybe moving the justice of the peace someplace over there to create room for this probate court. Hopefully, if we can do all that. Also, what you all thought about having it be an elected position or an appointed position by the Board of Judges. Also, that we would have to factor that into the bill as well. The way the 2015 date, January 1st, 2015 date came up was allowing whomever wants to run for it in the 2014 general. That way everyone has a fair shot, and then we begin, gives us time to budget it as well. One of the last factors was that if we create this court, it's inevitably going to cost some money to create it. I know there was some discussion about the probate fees paying for itself, but we discussed all we're doing is shifting it from y'all's court to the other court, and it may expedite some of the. But nonetheless, it's the same pot or the same pie. And we discussed that. I think the court is supportive of doing one probate court, but long range we also talked about, and that's something where the court really is going to have to sit down and discuss the future building needs of Cameron County. And we've talked about it for a long time about where to build. I know y'all wanted. Not you all, but there is a need for additional county courts. There may be a need for additional district courts, and we're just out of space. And where y'all are at was built over 40 years ago, so that court has served us well. It's time to move on, and we have to decide as a court: do we want to build it out north where we have a lot of property available, or do we want to build it somewhere next to Harrison? So that's things that I would like for you all as court members to be involved in those discussions when the appropriate time comes.
Okay.
And really, that was the essence of the discussion. I think Arnold, you've already been speaking to our state rep and about how that is going to be worded, and okay, and so everybody's in agreement with that. Did y'all get with Arnold?
We're working along with them.
Okay,
And then we'll inform you of everything we do. You'll get copies of everything.
Okay.
As long as we don't get two instead of one.
No, that's not going to happen.
We're happy to work with the commission.
Yeah.
No, well, we've come to you and we've all agreed that it would be one, and that's all that we are requesting at this time.
At this
That it
time.
be a specialized probate court, that's right.
Yeah, but I think y'all have been very gracious as well in recognizing that we do have budget restraints and we do have space constraints as well. And so we're gonna have to work around that. Now, we've had some discussions about building, I'm not gonna go into them now, but you know, building additional, another complex somewhere, either adjacent to the Harrison Street building or up north somewhere. But that's gonna require a voter-approved bond issue, what I would support, and lay it out and see if the voters want to approve to do that, because it will require a tax increase of some sort.
A question I have, is your anticipation of this court only to handle probate matters or to handle civil cases as well?
Civil as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be primarily the probate, the mental commitments, guardianships, with an emphasis on those areas, but also with a civil jurisdiction, I guess, for the remainder.
Well, let me ask Arnold, how was that going to be written? Because my understanding was going to be simply probate, because I don't want to get into a situation like we did with the family court where, you know, well, it's going to be part family and part this, because it somewhat defeats the purpose. I think the idea was to get all those probate cases, because of the obvious issues that you all might have, strictly into this court. And if you all have the caseload that you're saying in terms of probate, it's going to keep that court awfully busy all the time. But I think the thought would be to get it out of y'all's jurisdiction and put it into just this probate court. So I want to make sure that it's not 25%, or if it's got to be 100% probate.
On the probate,
Right.
we've agreed that it would be 100% probate.
Okay.
However, what we had discussed was a possibility of the civil cases that would be divided in 4.
Well, okay, I guess my question is, would anyone be able to file a probate case in any court, or would have to be in this
No.
one?
No, it would be just in that court.
Okay.
Just in the new court. And we would transfer the cases that we have, the probate cases that we had.
Correct.
To the new court.
Correct.
Right. So we would no longer, the 3 of us would no longer handle
Correct.
probate cases.
But my understanding is that this would be strictly a probate court. Arnold, that's the way I think it needs to be written, where it's strictly a probate court.
In the conversations I've had with Ruben Obel and their legislative director, it's been strictly a probate court.
Okay.
Those are the conversations that we've had.
And that's what I agreed to do.
See, but you got to remember too, probate courts don't have any jurisdiction. There's no $100,000 jurisdiction or anything else, okay? And sometimes you have a probate case that comes in that's an estate of somebody who has passed away, and it's a wrongful death case, and that same judge may be able to hear that same case without having to send it to another judge and clogging up 2 courts with the same cause, okay? And that's kind of what we were thinking.
How would you, well, then I just want to make
And it
sure.
happens here like Austin has that, and there's a few other districts that have it, because we did our homework too. We went and talked to a lot of probate judges before we got here. We go to the conference every year, and we ask them how they work those cases, and that's kind of what they've discussed with us.
So Judge, you would be speaking about, and I don't have any issue with that if the probate case is tied to specific, you can actually connect the dots and goes there, but I'm talking about cases that are not related, they just start pumping in because whatever reason. You know, there's probably...
You know, it seems to me that you're going to be relieved of a bunch of work on a regular basis by not doing probate, which means that removing that, that amount of work from your courts.
Just imagine, if you look at the numbers, and when you do get a chance to look at them, I would ask you to do that. Just in 2011, the number of civil cases filed in our court were 1,462. In 2012, it was 15,093. Now, we've got a lot of cases that are sitting there. And I'm gonna tell you, to be able to try all those cases at one time, we probably got them stacked up at this time, because we just can't get to them. So any help we can get to make sure that these cases are adjudicated will help.
Okay.
That's to include...
How much time does probate take from each of your practices?
See, what happens, Commissioner, is that it's not only about how much the time it takes, as far as in the courtroom, but there's a lot of administrative work that goes behind, in a probate court.
Right, the investigative
The
part,
investigative
the family
part.
follow-up.
It's a matter of how the judge chooses to run that court. But some probate courts will have 20 investigators. We discussed that, Judge. Wasn't that something that we had someone come discuss that with us? They have accountants that work for them. There's a lot of things that we'd like to do in our court, but we don't have the staff. And
That required by law?
that is required.
Right. Well, let me, if I may, Judge, 'cause I actually, last year I went to the probate conference because I knew this issue was coming up. And even though y'all denied my travel, I went on my own penny. And I went up there, and basically what I learned is when it comes to probate courts, we have to buy separate insurance policies for all three judges here because there's the judicial immunity that typically applies to judges when it comes to probate matters don't. These courts require that you have accountants, that you have investigators, that you have a lot more processes than we're currently giving them the resources to undertake. So one of the ideas in getting the probate court was to actually get, instead of having 3 different sets of staff, you have 1. That being the case, though, once we consolidate it and get the staff they need for that one court, I don't believe that that court will be inundated with probate cases. They'll be able to function, but they will be able to they'll have time to take on and listen to other civil cases. Now, you're not sending criminal cases to them, you're just going to send civil. Because I think what might happen, once you get one probate court running with all the staff you need, it can be efficient enough to have time to hear other civil cases. And I know that when you have criminal cases on your docket and civil cases, the criminal cases take precedence because people are in jail. So the civil cases kind of keep getting bumped.
Keep getting pushed.
And eventually you have a stack of cases. And so I understand, and that's why I wanted to clarify to make sure that when we have this statute written, that it's going to be written in a way that does give that new court the ability to take on civil cases as well. Because if we don't give it that jurisdiction, then all they're going to have is probate, and if through the staff they're efficient enough to say we can get it done 3 days out of the week, well, they've got 2 days that they're doing nothing, we could have civil cases being moved in that same court, so it makes us more efficient.
So when you say civil, are you talking about just the mental hearings and other civil cases, or are you talking all your civil would go to them?
All of it.
No, a probate court would hear the mental commitment hearings. But as far as civil, for instance, what we have right now is we have jurisdiction on civil cases up to $1 million. On probate, it's unlimited. But a lot of the auto accidents, a lot of the civil cases are filed in county courts, even though there's only 3 of us, because of the fees are less. You only have 6 jurors. So a lot of civil cases are filed in county court. I'll give you last year I had a death case because the probate matter involved an accident in which there was a death. And so I heard that case because we had jurisdiction over it. And so sometimes, as Judge Gonzalez or Judge McDonald stated, is sometimes if there's an accident or and then you have the probate case, then the judge has jurisdiction over it. And we just want to make sure that the probate judge has jurisdiction to hear those type of cases.
And I know you have a heavy docket, but I just want to address the concern that Commissioner Garza. On any given week, we have, well, at least I have, and I'm sure that it's shared by the other county court judges, we have about, I don't know, 10 to 30 cases announcing ready for trial. These are about 30 individuals that are ready to go to trial, not including civil cases. And all those cases have to get postponed because we can only try 1 or 2 cases a week. And so I just disagree with there being a workload that's all of a sudden being alleviated. What it'll do, and I'd like to make the analogy that right now the spigot's half on. And if you were to remove probate jurisdiction, we'd be able to turn that spigot on all the way because we'd be able to move through cases a lot more quickly, and it would help us process and dispose more cases. I completely disagree that it would relieve us of any more work. It's just will be focusing on different cases now.
Well, what it would do, it would expedite the process. And I don't have any issue with that. My concern is that if you give, and I'm not saying no, that's not going to happen. I want to make sure that we don't get into a situation where, you know, there's a lot more, there's no romance in doing probate work. It's a tough job, and there's no romance in it. And I mean that respectfully, where, you know, criminal cases and, you know, there's a lot more excitement to them, I guess. But my fear is that if we give them that latitude, that all of a sudden, you know what, probate's going to be, you know, we'll push it to the side because I have to do this civil case. And that's what I want to make sure is, I don't know if we can do language in the bill that says this is your priority, but once you do that, now the other thing we could do is pass it strictly probate and revisit it at the next session to see what's happening, and then amend that particular court to be able to accept. Or by that time, have the ability to create one, you know, an additional county court at law. I mean, I don't want to, you know, I want to move forward with it. I think, and that's the purpose that I asked you all to be here, so that everyone's on the same page. But I kind of agree. I don't want it to create the probate court, but all of a sudden it's going to be, you know, probate will not be the primary directive of that court.
And just for Commissioner Garza, again, look at the numbers. If you look at 2011, 2012, just
I've got
the criminal cases filed is almost 15,000 cases. Believe me, workload will not lighten up with a whole lot with the probate case.
What concerned me when I heard that the criminal cases and civil cases would be divided by 4 instead of by 3, and they would be shifted over, you know, appropriately to the probate court, that kind of got my antennas up, okay? I'll be very honest with you.
Not the criminal.
Not the criminal, just the civil.
Just the civil, okay? The civil cases, yeah.
On the criminal cases, it's not unusual for us to have 160 cases in one day. I mean, we handle very large dockets, and a lot of the trials have to get bumped because we can only hear one at a time.
And I don't have a problem with a probate person hearing cases if there's time available, but the primary purpose needs to be probate.
We completely agree with that.
Okay.
And we'll continue to work with the commission
and
as
not mental and
legislation
not, you
develops.
know, I mean, unless they're associated with a probate issue, you know.
So how do we control that?
Let me make a comment first, Judge. First of all, I want to say that I completely agree with Commissioner Sanchez. I met with the judges. There's no doubt that we're probably, a county our size should probably have at least 6 county court at laws. And if you go down there on any given day and see what they do, you'll understand how heavy their caseload is. I don't think the probate court should be restricted strictly to probate. I think that should be its emphasis. I don't think these 3 judges are going to allow probate cases in their court to relieve the other judge to handle a civil or a criminal case, because that's what the case was, that's what that particular court was created for. There's also another issue that I wanted to bring up about the liability. AR checking on, I mean, it concerns me that the liability of a probate judge is basically wide open. That you have immunity on a lot of issues that a probate judge does not.
Correct.
And that concerns me that we don't have a way to protect that judge, because I would feel very strange about wanting to be that judge, knowing the liability I would have if I was that judge. When I met with Judge McDonald, well, at least a year ago, we talked about the need for at least 3 more courts, how we can stagger them in over the coming years. And as we grow, it kind of goes with this building transition. We want to expand. Well, as a county, we need to expedite the way we do things. And I think our court system and our jail system, that we have problem processing prisoners so quickly, is because of the issues at the court. You can't process them quick enough. The courts upstairs from y'all have a lot more time available to them, and I don't mean that literally, but they don't have to see as many cases as you guys do. And so I do sympathize with you, and I hope to be around to help you be able not only to create this particular court, but many, at least a couple more courts going forward. It'll help the entire process of how we do business in Cameron County, especially the judicial area.
Thank you. Again, you've been a great help in helping us put that together. And just to address, Judge, it can be handled through local rules. Local rules can address any sort of workflow or lack of workflow that a probate judge may or may not have.
Okay. All right.
Local rules are done by the Board of Judges?
Yes, Board of Judges, but if it's my understanding, if it's our jurisdiction, we would be the votes that
You would be the
determine
group
local
that
rules.
would,
Correct.
okay.
Okay, Arnold, you okay with that? I guess the last thing is there any preference to you all, whether it be an appointed position or an elected position?
I don't think it's their choice.
An elected position. I think that the other probate courts that do exist in Texas, they're all elected.
Well, that doesn't mean they can't be appointed, just because they all
Right,
do it.
but I think they should, in
All right.
they
I
should
mean,
be
that's,
elected.
I mean, I would respect the wishes of the Board of Judges.
There
I
have
mean,
been some new judicial opinions that prohibit. Originally, we were favorable to having a referee or a magistrate or some sort of associate judge handling it. But there have been some judicial ethics opinions that say, regardless if it's a magistrate or associate judge, they cannot have an outside practice if they're handling judicial matters. And so I think it would be more intellectually honest to have it as an elected position.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the same.
Second.
I have
Thank you.
one question, Judge. You all spoke about having accountants available for these probate cases, these large ones or whatever. Is that paid out of the estate, or is that something that the court has to provide? Or I guess my question would be, other than the staff that you all are allotted, is that one court going to need extra help?
They will need an accountant. What happens is that the estate will have their own accountant, if they can afford to do so. They'll have their own accountant, they submit an accounting, and they are required to submit an accounting annually. Mm-hmm. And so to have an accountant on staff, that accountant would be able to review the reports that are filed annually and compare one to the next. For instance, why is $1 million missing from last year's report? So it would be to have an accountant on staff to review the work that the accountant for the family would have.
It helps protect the judge.
Protect the judge. That's right. On probate matters, that's the only area of law in which a judge does not have judicial immunity, complete judicial immunity.
So that accountant helps the judge keep up with checking everybody's homework, because the judge has a lot going on.
Right. You'd rely on the accountants to review them and say there's so much money missing, or and then also the investigators to come back and say there's a concern because this ward does not look well or is not well taken care of, and so they are our eyes and ears, because other than that, all we know is what they're reporting to us.
And that's where, sorry, go ahead.
And they don't often come to court, but once a year maybe sometimes, or once every 6 months. And so by having these investigators and the accountants, you're able to make sure no one's getting taken advantage of.
Right.
Correct?
Right. And they are required as well on the guardianships to have, to comply annually with the estate.
The filing.
Right.
I think the final comment would be on the budget, on the budgetary issue. We won't have to address it this coming budget, but the following one we probably will. The overhead, for the lack of a better word, of that particular court is going to be probably 20 to 25% higher than what your overhead is on your court right now, simply because you're going to have to hire, you know, a CPA or an accountant or an auditor, basically, additional investigators to do all that. Would you agree? It's going to cost more to operate that probate court than it is to operate your court?
There's definitely specialized knowledge that's required by the staff.
Right?
Yep.
So it's going to be more costly than whatever your cost is. We're going to add another $100,000 to it.
At least.
And more space too.
Yeah, and whatever. So just let the court know that this would be like passing right now an unfunded mandate, because we don't have that budgeted. So when the time comes, we're going to have to pony up and find a way to fund it, unless we're going to cut someplace else, and we're going to have to look at the other revenue sources, and that's going to be the ad valorem tax rate. And we talked about that as well when we discussed this.
And we will keep in communication
No, I
with
know
you at
that.
every step. That's not an issue. We'll make sure that when this bill is put in and passed, that we get together on all the deadlines that we need. From building to staff to budgeting, to make sure this doesn't go like it has before.
Well, let's get the bill passed first.
To make it smooth.
Make sure it doesn't get any hiccups. Okay?
Well, and I want to I actually want to thank you three because, you know, just in our county next door that isn't quite twice our size, they've got 9 county court and statutory probate courts total, and we have 3. So, you know, they have 3 times the courts that we have, yet they're not even twice our size. So I know that y'all undertake a lot more work. And one thing you didn't put in your chart here is if you would have gotten all those big counties that have the comparative courts, they'd have had a lot more county courts at law than we do. So thank you.
I'm not going to take credit for this report. This was the county clerk that assisted us. And we've been working with them from the very beginning to be able to get to work with you and the court. So they assisted us and they drew this up for us. We just sat and gave them the information that we needed.
We'll thank the county clerk as well. But I think along the lines about comparing to other counties, we've done it, and it's easy to do, to compare, and you cherry pick once you want to compare this county to other county. You cherry, well, this one there. But what you have to also factor in is the tax base, the tax rate, not only the population. And so it's I don't want to be cherry picking. Hidalgo County's got more of this. Well, they've also got twice the population or more than we do. They probably have higher crime statistics than we do. They probably have more people dying just simply because of the population. So it's easy to cherry pick, you know, statistics, right? But we have to look at the whole thing before we start doing that. But I would agree that we need to move forward, and the next big step is going to be try to plan, encourage the county, the court to hire, if we don't have it already, some kind of a guy to come in and plan our facilities. I think we have something already, but it's probably outdated. All right? Okay, guys, I had a motion, a second.
We also have a county that's next to us that has a much higher tax rate than we do.
That's right.
Okay, so let's cherry pick all the areas.
That's exactly right. You look at everything. Motion is second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries.
Thank you.
Let's go back to consent. Any items need to be pulled out?
F and G.
F and G
Yeah,
to pull out
just for discussion.
for discussion. Everything is for discussion. Anything else?
Judge, table item EE, double E.
Good.
Which one, Joe?
Double E, the table.
Table?
Table.
Anything else? T,
T? T?
yes.
Okay. Anything else? Do I hear a motion to approve consent with the exceptions of item F and G and T that will be discussed separately into table item double E?
Triple B, please, pull for discussion.
Triple B
And that'll be it. And I'll make that motion.
for discussion. And triple B to take out to discuss. Moved by Commissioner Hernandez,
Can you add triple L to the discussion?
pulling out triple L.
Just for discussion.
Anything else? Triple L.
Triple.
Anything else?
I amend the motion.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Hernandez to approve consent items with the exception of those items that will be pulled for discussion and that one item that was tabled. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Commissioner Gatz. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, carries. Item F, consideration and authorization for preliminary plat approval of Laureles Country Estates. And let me go ahead
I
and
wanna
talk
do
about
G
item
also.
G.
Yeah.
Consideration and authorization for preliminary plat approval for Longoria Commercial Subdivision. Yes, sir.
Judge, I visited with Mr. Hinojosa yesterday on these issues because we're looking at some situations in the subdivision process that the county uses that brings up potential problems in the future with what we're approving. And if you were to look, and I ask you to look at both of those items, F and G, and I know that I'm going to ask for Ernesto to help me with the discussion, but if you look at the preliminary approval plat on both of those, you'll see that we're doing two things nowadays. We're doing approval of subdivision plats in areas that require a half-acre lot or larger if they're out in the county and a septic system is used. And we're also approving preliminary plats for areas that have a sewage collection system. And in the areas that have a sewage collection system, the lots are between 1/4 to 1/3 of an acre. And the 1/4 acre lots lend themselves to have frontage available for parking or access, which is extremely narrow to access and get into. It also causes or will cause, because of the rural cross-section road system that we use in our subdivisions, no parking to occur in front of these lots. We already encountered it. I know that we have that problem in Laguna Heights. I know we have that problem to some extent, or have had it in Cameron Park, where we have open ditches for drainage in front of the properties, which is what the proposed preliminary plat for F is, you know, which is the same as G. But when you look at the maps, you know, the amount of space in front of the lots are double the size, minimally, from one to the other. So we're actually creating city lots, you know, or what I consider city lots, which are very small, in some cases less than 50-foot frontage of access in a public road, which means that if you put a driveway and you have an open ditch in the front, where do you park? And the lot is 1/4 of an acre. It's a very small size lot. So I asked Ernesto and Alex and visited with him to come up with some suggestions for us before we approve F. G, I have absolutely no problem with. It was just a comparison that we were going to use. But, you know, before we start approving these things, you know, we've got to make sure that we have adequate space for these folks that are going to live there to even be able to park a car in front of their houses.
And in following up with the commissioner's comment, this particular subdivision, which is north of Los Fresnos, off of Bingley Road, just happens to be that the sanitary sewer collection system is in the immediate area, and therefore residents of this particular subdivision can tie into the standard collection system. And in doing that, that kind of changes the criteria for lot sizing, okay? And it's anywhere from, you know, 5,000 to 6,000 square feet of area that's only required by our current requirements of the subdivision rules. If it was a septic tank system, then we would have the half-acre lot requirement. One of the things that Commissioner Garza was saying is that there's 2-3 lots in this particular subdivision, maybe 4 lots that are in a cul-de-sac. Therefore, the frontage of the lot on that cul-de-sac, they're 35 feet, or a couple of them are 30 feet. So that's what he was alluding to. Is there enough space, frontage, to park a car? Obviously, you can put a culvert pipe for your driveway, which is minimum 16 feet. So it leaves room for access, but not for parking. And again, it's because of the rural section that we have, which is you have a roadway and then you have a borrow ditch, and then the shoulder, and then the right-of-way. So there is very little room to park, I guess, and I guess that's the issue that, or the concern that has come up. Currently, we don't have any standards that we can enforce as far as lot frontage. There is no state statutes, therefore we can't adopt or incorporate. And that's one of the things that the Commissioner was saying, well, what can we do as a county to see if we can regulate frontage? And the only thing we can find or have found that addresses lot frontage is on subchapter E, 232-103. there it does address, or you can adopt standards for lot frontage. Do you have copies of that? So you can give the commissioner's seat so they can look at that particular statute. Alex? So basically what it says there on 232-103 lot frontages, by an order adopted and entered into the minutes of the Commissioners Court, and after a notice is published in a newspaper of general circulation in the county, the Commissioners Court may adopt reasonable standards for minimum lot frontages on existing county roads and establish reasonable standards for the lot frontages in relation to curves in the road. So what that alludes to is only on existing roads, but not necessarily inside a proposed subdivision road. So maybe there we could provide or implement, we can introduce maybe legislation or a bill that would change that one or something similar to that, where where the state legislature would give us authority to adopt standards. But there is no other place that I know of on statutes or our regulations where we can adopt something and implement it and have enforcement capability. So that's the only thing I found out about that, Commissioner. Do you have copies of that?
Basically what you're saying is the developer is choosing to set up the lots this size and not give that space.
Correct.
And because it's a private subdivision, we have no authority to say, no, you have to give a certain amount of setback.
Well, but yes, because basically we leave it up to the engineer to design the plat or the subdivision. And so he uses sound engineering standards or practices where he may look at particular cities, what are the minimum dimensions for lot frontages, and so he uses that criteria, I presume. And so he sets a minimum lot width to accommodate, you know, the additional lots in the subdivision, but we don't tell them what that dimension is. We leave it up to them, and we're relying on their expertise to design something. But currently, we don't have anything that we can tell them, no, it has to be 60 feet or 50 feet. Cities do have some ordinances that they adopt, but as far as the county is concerned, I don't think there is anything on.
See, and one of the issues that I looked at when I saw the plat, and this is phase one of possibly 4 phases that will be coming up in the same general area, is that you've got 61 lots with 1 road leading into them, which means that kids are going to have to walk to the road to get picked up by a school bus, because a bus probably cannot make it in there into that subdivision that has no sidewalks, that every kid that lives in that subdivision will have to walk on the street to get from the back of this subdivision to the front. And, you know, it's a huge safety issue for those kids. I mean, we're looking at this areas, and the average number of households per lot usually is like 2.4 to 2.7, which means you're going to have kids in there. We're approving this, or we're preliminarily approving this particular plot, but I think that we need to look at utilizing urban type roads that require sidewalks to some extent when we have concentrated areas like this. Yes, the cost of developing goes up, but at the same time, the quality of life for those folks that live there is going to significantly improve. I just have a concern. The other concern I had is right to the right of that development is a county park that already experiences significant flooding and major rain events because of the capacity of the outfalls. You know, this is phase one of 4 phases that are being considered. All that water is going into those same ditches, that same ditch, not same ditches.
Mariposa Ranch all over again.
You know.
Similar.
Yeah, and
Wow.
you know, we need to somehow be able to be proactive. There's got to be something that allows us to, if we're going to be approving concentrated subdivision plats like this, that we could ask for sidewalks, that we could ask for a little different collection system of runoff, And maybe we can't do it today. I know that we can't do that, but I think that, you know, if we approve preliminarily this plat, that kind of gives a green light to the developer to say, keep going, and once we do one, we're gonna do all 4 phases. Once we do all 4 phases, we're gonna multiply the problem 4 times, and it's great for development. It's not, I'm not against development. I just think it needs to be done in a way where everybody gets the benefit.
Well, and I'm glad you have that foresight, because right now in my precinct, there's 2 main issues. Mariposa Ranch, the subdivision was designed up to state standard, but because the outfall is higher than the subdivision, it floods. And so when people went in there and bought those lots, if they knew that they were going to get flooded every time it rained, they wouldn't have bought there. They didn't anticipate the problems they would have in making their biggest investment. I have another subdivision out on 281 where you have the same thing. I mean, this is actually curb and gutter, and it drains into a pond, but that pond gets full and then the street floods because there's no outfall. I mean, we're working to try to figure it out, but if we don't make these anticipated problems part of the preliminary plat approval, then we're going to deal with bigger problems later. So do we have any mechanism can we legally say, no, we're not going to approve this and have good grounds, or because it falls within state standard, we have to approve it?
Well, to address first the first issue, or the first concerns that Commissioner Garza was saying about sidewalks. I know the court had asked us to come back and do a workshop on street lighting and sidewalks. I have been looking, and Alex and I have been doing a little research. It's not going to be a problem bringing something to the court where we can adopt standards for implementing sidewalks within the subdivision itself, and maybe the front, also the frontage. That's not going to be a problem. We're waiting a little bit to see if anything else is going to come out of this legislature. I know there's some things there about rules that are coming up that are going to be changed, and so we want to bring a complete package to you also. We can do those changes. I anticipate that implementing the sidewalks is not going to be a problem. We need to adopt an order with a standard, which we can do that. And I think there's a statute where we can, what do you call it? We can implement that, and we have authority to do that.
One of the items that we talked about the last few weeks has been a limited ordinance-making authority that the state would allow us, that we're going to try to get approved this particular session. Now, that would also help us set standard, because it's hard to start from the day on we're going, you know, we need to have public notice and let people know that we're going to change. I agree with Commissioner Garza completely, but how do we, you know, can we stop this now and say, let's go back and look at this? Well, it's going to be a major problem. The density issue, just the traffic flow is going to be incredible.
I understand. No, and you're correct in that sense that there is some concerns there. Currently, this particular subdivision will meet the minimum requirements, other than we need to address the drainage, of which Commissioner Garza is saying. In talking to the developer, and Alex has talked to him and the engineers, we were going to do on-site detention, which is similar to having a pond there, run the runoff onto a detention pond, and then letting it out slowly into the system, drainage system, where it gives it a chance for it to catch up, and then slowly the levels of the water, or the runoff can be able to accommodate the drainage.
The only problem with those ponds is once the subdivision sells out, the owner of the subdivision basically abandons the pumps, and then it becomes our problem.
That's what Commissioner was saying, that Luz del Cielo is an old subdivision. It's been there in the early 80s. The standards at that time didn't have a lot of provisions to take care of those situations there. What happens there is you collected all the storm water on a underground drainage system, and it comes underground with underground piping onto a pond which didn't have an overflow. Now, we looked at all that calculations and everything else on that pond, and it's supposed to accommodate the 25-year storm. That means that if
Yeah,
you
but-
have that storm,
And so we have
the
a
water would
25-year storm every year.
2
I
years.
understand, but
And
that's
we have
the
a 100-year
standard.
storm every year.
There is a standard.
Let me ask, before we, I'm glad Commissioner mentioned Mariposa subdivision, because we were involved in that several years ago. One of the things that came out at that time and was, even though these subdivisions are meeting the minimum state requirements, and what we were looking at the time, if you all remember, because Commissioner, you were on the court, was all we were concerned about was the water getting out of the subdivision. But we weren't seeing where that water was going after it got out of the subdivision.
Right.
In this particular subdivision, is someone looking at what happens to the water once it gets off the subdivision?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so are you seeing it that goes all the way out to wherever it's
Well,
supposed to go?
yeah, and I was going to address that, but I just wanted to answer the commissioner's question about what happened to that particular subdivision. Now, we are working now to your office to work with the U.S. Parks and Wildlife.
U.S. Fish and
U.S.
Wildlife to do an outfall.
And hopefully they'll let us do a permit with them where we can, because it's a private pond. It's not the county's, it's a homeowner's. Of course, they don't maintain it. It silts up, so the volume is no longer there. Nobody's maintained it in many, many years. But to answer that question, there has a solution. U.S. Fish and Wildlife has some vacant area there. There's a low-lying area. So what we're going to try to do is work a permit with them and get an easement granted to them, and we will extend an overflow from that pond to that low-lying area. So when that rain comes, that big event, it'll come into the pond, but as soon as it reaches a certain level, it'll start spilling into that low-lying area.
And the only reason I brought that
we'll
up,
take care of that.
the only reason I brought that up was to basically show how
Yes.
30 years ago, the subdivision was built. It had curb and gutter, underground drainage into a pond, yet every time it rains, we still flood. And so here we can anticipate there's going to be problems. It's better to try to fix them now than wait till.
And yes, and to address the concern of this particular subdivision, we were going to do a detention pond. However, the engineers decided not to do that. They want to capitalize on the surface area of the subdivision. They are
That means make
proposing
more
to
lots.
improve
Okay.
that drainage on the side of the subdivision, which is already there between the county lot there or park and the subdivisions.
The county
That
park.
ditch- Yes, sir. And that their proposal is that they are going to improve that drain ditch, which flows to the north, underneath a elevated drainage canal, and then onto Resaca de los Cuates onto the bay. So it does have an outfall, Judge. But again, if you're talking about
It has a non-maintained outfall.
but
Okay.
the jurisdiction there is drainage district number 4, which is not,
Defunct.
well,
It's
there's
an
nobody there to operate and maintain. So it's still the issue is what do you do with those areas that don't have jurisdiction? And yet, development wants to come there.
Let
What
me
do
ask you
do?
one question on this. Can we require an urban system, road system in a subdivision like this as a county?
Yes.
We can require it? Do we have jurisdiction? Is there a statutory law that allows us to?
What are you saying by urban, like
I
curb
mean,
and gutter?
Yes.
No.
I don't think so.
No,
No.
we don't have that
No, there's
authority.
no provisions for
And that's what a subdivision
Cities
like this
do, but
needs. You know,
counties
that's
don't.
what a subdivision, I mean, it's real simple, you look at the subdivision on G, on item G,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and you have 3 lots being proposed. You're looking at 150 frontage by 680 depth.
Yes, sir.
You got a whole lot of surface area to deal with for percolation, absorption, and everything else.
Yeah, those are commercial lots.
Right.
It's a little bit different, yeah.
Here, we have lots in this subdivision that have less than 30-foot frontage to access the road to get into the
Yes, sir.
subdivision.
Yes, sir.
Okay? I provided you pictures yesterday
Mm-hmm.
of the property that the county owns right next door to this
Correct.
lot, in which we had a 1-inch rain event maybe 2 years ago, and we had flooding there.
Yes, sir.
Because there is no outfall that's adequate to take the capacity of our park, which is less than 20 acres. This phase 1 out of 4 phases on this subdivision that is being proposed, there's over 100 acres. Phase 1, okay?
Yes, sir.
Is almost twice as much in space as the county park. The county park has very limited blacktop or cement on
Right,
it, except
just
for the parking lot. And it's not adequate already as
Yes,
far as capacity. So there's got to be something that we can do, that we can utilize. You know, I really don't want to be there in the next major rain event with folks like we're having to do so in Mariposa. We have enough of those already in
I
the
understand.
precinct.
And that's why I'm saying that the engineers are proposing to widen that ditch, improve it, to accommodate the capacity of the runoff. We haven't seen those calculations. We're not going to bring a final plat to the court until we discuss it with you or the court itself, to make sure that that ditch is going to have improvements on, it's adequate to handle the runoff. At this point, they don't have the data yet. That's why we're in preliminary. We don't bring a final plat unless that is addressed.
We need to remember that that ditch drains the opposite side of the highway, and it comes underneath the highway. And all the area on the opposite side of the highway is already draining into it also.
Yes, sir. Now, again, all we can do under the current standards is we can address what's in front of the subdivision and look at outfall. Upstream, there might be other situations.
Ernesto, let's cut to the chase here.
Okay.
Is there anything in this preliminary plat that is in violation of anything?
No, sir.
Okay.
It meets minimum requirements.
Right, and so pretty much, I mean, we either approve, disapprove, or table, but I agree with all the arguments, but you know, we've got lack of sidewalks all over the county. We have these issues in up 281 and Mariposa, and they're all over the place. What is it that we can do at this point? Okay, if they, and my question is this: if they're meeting all the minimum requirements, they've met state requirements, our local, whatever our local jurisdiction is, they've met all of those things. So how can we, and maybe this may be addressed to legal, but how can we responsibly deny them or deny the preliminary plat if they met all the minimum state requirements? It's like having them giving us a variance in reverse. I mean, if you don't like the law, you know, you don't give a variance, or you don't violate, you change the law. And I think the point's brought up that we require, I mean, now, some kind of legislation, but I don't even, the limited zoning ability does not cure that.
Not
Okay?
at this point.
No, I mean, no, even if we pass it the way we're writing it, it doesn't cure this. So we have to immediately, I mean, start working on language that brings in that ordinance making ability, but also addresses the subdivision rules that we have. Because right now, this person has done everything that we've asked him to do, right?
Correct.
Are they complying with everything, correct?
In the preliminary stage.
In the
yes.
preliminary, well,
Yeah.
and that's where we're at.
Yeah,
So
we're still not-
how can, and I'm not saying that you're doing this, but can you give a recommendation to stop it and not issue the preliminary approval
Right.
based on what we have in front of us today?
No, honestly, I cannot recommend denial at this point, knowing that they met the minimum requirements that we have. And again, preliminary-wise, it meets those requirements. I couldn't come to the court and say, you know, you deny it. Of course,
Okay,
it's up to you
let's-
all. I mean,
Let's fast forward. We get to the point where you come to us with the final
right,
plat approval,
yes, sir.
okay? Then at the pace that they're going, is there anything that by the time you get to the final plat approval that's going to address the concerns that the commissioners have brought up?
That's true. If the subdivider does not meet between the preliminary and the final plat, which you'll have the engineering report, calculations, improvements that they're going to do.
I know that, but
But if it doesn't meet that, we won't bring.
well, I know that. I mean, that's an automatic. No, what I'm asking that is within the final plat approval, is there language in there that's going to address the concerns regarding, you know, ingresses, egresses, parking issues, is that on there?
No, sir, but
That-
because we don't have statute yet.
I know that,
for
and
lot
that's, and I'm
frontage.
asking you the question for the
drainage,
record.
yes. Drainage, yes.
Okay, I'm asking for the records. I don't want to come back in the final.
right.
They've complied with everything, but still there's an issue regarding, on-street parking. Because it doesn't address that. And that was one of the concerns that I
And
heard.
you may not be able to do that on this plat, Commissioner. to be
Well,
honest. Because there's
on
no-
any plat, until we get the language changed
Well,
at the state level.
It's up to the Commissioner's Court if they want to hold all the pending subdivisions that have those issues as far as lot frontage,
Well,
but we don't have nothing to hold them back with.
Right,
We don't
and
have-
that's-
let me ask you this. If people decide to park on the street,
Right.
those are private streets, private property, right?
Well, it's public.
No,
I
they're
mean,
public.
it's a
Well,
public- it's a
so
public
do we have
county
the
road.
authority to regulate who parks on the street?
No, that's what I'm saying, we don't have authority to regulate parking.
So what, so,
Other than you can park if you want.
well,
I don't
so,
think
so
there's any-
people park there and block the road and an ambulance has to come
Oh,
through.
well, no, that's why you have 60-foot of right-of-way. I mean, the road is going to be 20-foot wide, you still have a shoulder, you can still,
Yeah, but I get, one guy from this side parks here, the other guy parks here, and you have enough maybe
No,
for one
I don't know if
car.
there's anything we can do with that. That's traffic safety, and I don't know,
Well, that's still
We
an
can't
engineering issue.
anticipate that?
pardon?
We can't anticipate that and not approving this?
You got me there. I don't know how to answer that question, sir. It's a legal matter, and, I mean,
Legal?
engineering-wise, I don't think you're going to have a safety issue, I guess, for emergency response, because you still have a two-way road, but you can still come in and out, unless you had two vehicles on the same, I mean, on each side, but you still have ample, that's why we say we have 60-foot of right-of-way. Even though there's a borrow ditch, you can still maneuver around
It's a bar ditch
an
on the
obstacle.
edge.
On the
You know,
edge.
and it's
On
not
each
a,
side.
well, it depends on the design, but normally they're not more than 18 inches of depth on.
Yeah, but you're not going to have, I mean, look, let's be clear. Just because you have 60 feet of right-of-way doesn't mean you got 60 feet that
No,
is
but-
available for maneuvering. That borrow ditch,
No, I understand.
I mean, you're going to have people trying to sweat, go around and go into the bar ditch. They're not going to get out.
But it's no different than any other
No,
county
and
having.
and I don't think that's a dispute. I think the dispute is that we're asking for a lot of things that are not
I understand,
legal
yes.
to ask for the
Right.
way the rules are written today.
Correct.
That, right?
Yes, sir, and that's
So,
what I'm saying. yeah.
can you get with, either with David or with whomever's going to take the lead on this and assist them with language, because we need to get that in. I haven't seen any written language or any legislative agenda items that we're proposing. The closest one we've got so far is on the probate court, but I have not seen anything where we've, on the veterans issue, on the ad valorem, on some other ones. So you may need to get together like ASAP.
We're past the date,
And
aren't
if,
we?
and
Well,
if,
there's a
Jack
House
is
bill that we're going to
proposing some
discuss.
limited ordinance making authority.
but I don't, yeah, and I haven't seen the language. I don't think that that's going to address that. I just don't know. I haven't read it, but I
No,
want to make sure.
It has to do with the planning requirements.
Yeah, and it's
Not
got nothing to
necessarily
do
roads.
with this, what we're talking about. So you may want to get together really quick and come up with some language that you believe will address the concerns that the commissioners have mentioned.
That being what? The
Well, I
frontage?
think the off-street, the on-street parking, I think the ingress and the egress, because the ordinance is not going to help this. I mean, unless there's specific language in there that gives us that authority. But right now, my question was, can we legally deny this preliminary
I
plat?
don't know, I'm asking.
No, and I
you
think the
because
answer is no. I mean,
Well,
You
I
can put
think
a
that we
sign, no
can.
parking. I
okay,
mean,
well, if legal can tell us we
You know,
can, then
I
we
mean, I
can.
think that, I'm going to bring out two things, On the checklist for subdivision that is being recommended to us, looking at it just briefly, I find two mistakes.
Yes, sir.
It
those
is
need
not
to
in
be
the
corrected.
ETJ of Harlingen, number one.
Correct.
And it is not in the Harlingen Irrigation District, number 6. So if they can't get at least that corrected.
Well, I was going to bring that up, that we did have
Well,
a correction.
you know-
And we apologize to the court for.
There's two
typo.
mistakes, so I suggest that I move we table this item.
Second.
F, I don't, G, I don't have a problem with.
Okay, on F, And you want it tabled because there's two errors
Mistakes.
on the application?
And I have some concerns.
No, I
too,
mean, is that
but
what, I mean, just so,
yeah,
is that the reason? Okay.
yes.
That's enough.
Moved by Commissioner Garza, do I have a second?
Second.
By Commissioner Sanchez, discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, carries. Item G, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
By
Second.
Commissioner Gatsa, second by Commissioner Sanchez, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, item carries. Item T, consideration and authorization to utilize JP technology funds for purchase of new computer systems.
I've been noticing in the past few weeks that we've been replacing computers, and I don't have a problem with replacing them. Is this something we're going to do for all the JPs?
I would hope so, because I visited JP Mendoza's office a week ago, and he's got anchors there. Anchors means like the real old computers in that office.
Okay.
And, you know, I would hope that we would continue modernizing those offices. And, you know, they're still on dial-up out of that office. They don't even have high-speed internet.
Well, I visited with Joe Reyes. We had a meeting with some folks from TechShare that came down with the new direct filing that we're working on with the DA's office. And one of the issues that came up was that we don't have the hardware that will work with the new system. And so I know I've experienced it in my office. My computer's a relic and it doesn't work. And they said, we can get you another one. I said, well, no. I said, my iPad keeps me with what I need to do. I can handle it, give it to someone else. But when I was talking to Joe, he says, we don't have a, I guess, a budget for replacement of computers countywide.
Yeah.
That sometime in the past, in order to create, you know, reduce the budget or make it balance or whatever, that was taken away. And the problem with computers, when you don't have that budget to replenish the hardware, as new software comes into play, the old computers can't handle it. And so he told me that we don't have a budget, and I said, well, next budget cycle we need to work on it, because all these new changes in software are going to require it. Luckily for the JPs, we have a technology fund that's earmarked just for them, so it's not a problem getting their computers replaced, because that money can only be used for that. But countywide, we do have that issue. So
We have the equipment list on a daily basis.
And I guess the next question would be to our county auditor. Do we have enough money in there to finish up covering all the JPs?
The JP Technology Fund has ample money to update and to bring up all the JP offices technologically. Referencing the budget for the computers, those have generally been budgeted in the equipment list that the county approves every year. If the court will recall, all of the equipment purchases funding was used on the radio improvements, the radio upgrades that needed to be done, the communications. So consequently, there is no equipment list for general fund for fiscal year 2013. Normally, what the court will do in the equipment list, they allocate anywhere from usually 70 to 100, 150,000 for computer replacements. We do not have that equipment list at all for this year. So that is true, we do not have it, but it was not for this year. It was not just done away with.
Okay.
But we've been using it every
Yes.
year in the past.
Yes.
And maybe, I guess maybe his point, and we can get him to come give us a presentation, but maybe his point was we need to increase that budget if we're going to try to get everybody up to par.
Right, there never is enough budget in there for, you know, complete computer replacement for the county.
We've never budgeted enough.
Not for the countywide, no.
Okay.
Well, because I think it's in the millions.
Probably so, yes.
And that's why we have, I think
we have over 400, if not more, computers. I don't.
And I think we talked about this briefly. I don't know if it was with you here one day about the IT department. They frequently, I mean, almost every year they come and say, we need to upgrade, and it's
Yes.
always significant, and it hasn't been, but
Correct.
one year I said, you know, we're going to have to do this. One day these things are going to crash and we're all going to be somewhat
Yeah,
helpless.
Yeah, we met, I think, last week, and it is something that we will have to put on the equipment list for 2014.
Right. But we're talking
For
about the
upgrades.
whole system, not just the laptops. We're talking about the whole IT system.
Yeah, I think the better person to do that would be.
The servers,
the IT.
exactly.
Maybe
Yes.
we can get an agenda item in another meeting to get a presentation on like a snapshot of where we are and where we need to be.
And I think what Joe was talking to you about was as we move into the next phases of Odyssey, the current hardware and software that we have in these users' computers isn't adequate to support the newer versions of Odyssey as we move forward. So that's where we're
Well,
at.
and especially like there's a Supreme Court mandate that everything go
Right.
paperless.
Right.
And that's going to require a lot, in the next year. So
Yeah, and I think we had a conference call with CUC regarding that issue as well. So Joe right now is tasked with finding out all the costs associated with getting all our users of Odyssey up to the software and hardware needs that they need to continue to operate Odyssey, and getting those costs. And he should be getting that to me in the next week or so.
okay, thanks, Arnold.
Commissioner?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Benavides, second by Commissioner Gatsa to approve. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, item carries. Triple B. Health Department Office, travel to San Antonio.
I brought this item up for some clarification as to why all 5 people are going at the same time on this trip. Is it necessary?
Yes, this is an annual conference, and I don't know if you have one of the attachment. It does specify what each person each role, the role they have during a hurricane response. Basically, we have the administrator going. She provides the support at the EOC. We have the interim public health response director, who also provides support at the EOC. We have the interim environmental health director, who provides the environmental health response and recovery support. We have our epidemiologist going. He usually plays the situation unit lead during a hurricane response. And then we have our messenger, because he provides logistic support during a disaster, public health response.
So is this normal procedure yearly that y'all do this?
Yes, we do. Mhm.
Motion to approve?
Moved by
Second.
Commissioner Hernandez, second by Commissioner Gatsa. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries. Triple L, JP 3-2, Office Staff Court Coordinator to attend court personnel seminar. Who pulled that one?
I just wanted to look at that one because the same concern that Commissioner Hernandez brought up on this one. I know in the past we had trouble when everyone was out and the office wasn't working, and I'm not sure if the judge, if these are his only employees or if he still has Mary, because I understand she was considering retiring.
If no one's here to answer that, do you want to table it? Because it's not till April.
Yeah, move to table.
Second?
Moved by Commissioner Sanchez, second by Commissioner Hernandez to table. And somebody get a message to somebody from that court? Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, carries. Budget amendments, line item transfers under salary schedules.
Judge, Commissioners, you have the budget amendments in front of you. The first ones are line item transfers for utilizing the JP Technology Fund for data processing that was approved at the prior meeting. The second item is we are pulling lab salaries from the jail division of $11,440 to cover the housing of inmates for the month of, I believe it was January, when they had to ship out some inmates out of county. Then we have Constable Precinct 2. We have the JAG grant, the DA's federal forfeitures, the Sheriff's drug forfeiture grant, the Sheriff's federal forfeitures again. And on the last budget amendment that you see, we're sweeping lab salaries for a number of departments as listed there. And moving into the contingency line item in general admin for $69,878. Then you have salary schedule for the OVAC grant for the DA's office. You have the HIDA grant, which is a departmental change only. Then you have salary schedule for the juvenile departments. And for the Sheriff's Department, federal forfeiture, for your approval.
Martha, I have a question.
Certainly.
Couple questions. The JP technology fee, what is that being used for?
They were for computer upgrades. They were being, that the court approved for one of the JP offices at the prior meeting. I don't recall exactly which
It was
one.
for the magistrate court, I think, but I think
No, that item was tabled.
that was?
Yes.
Okay, so
This is one of the JP offices.
so it's for one of the JP offices?
Yes. I believe it's JP 2-2, perhaps?
Okay, well, just, because I got an email from one of the judges saying, hey, you can't use that money other than for the JPs, which
Yes,
they're
no,
correct.
that item was tabled.
Okay, all right, and then the other thing, you said these are lap salaries that are being used for what?
Item number, agenda item, transfer number 2 is for the jail division. We are transferring lap salaries of $11,440 in the jail division to cover the housing of inmates out of county for the month of January.
And what were the other ones?
The hot water issue.
The other one, the last one is we are sweeping lap salaries in a number of departments and putting it in general admin, which is what the court had directed to sweep lap salaries and put them in a contingency line item.
How much do we have in that fund right now on all the lap salaries?
I believe this is the first time we sweep it. It's $69,878.
So from October 1 until now, this is the first sweep we do?
This is the first sweep that we do, yes. We are not sweeping the additional lap salaries that we have in the sheriff's office, not the sheriff's, rather the jail division, and that is because they may potentially come up with another housing, a population issue to where they will have to house inmates out of county. So we have not swept lap salaries there. They do have vacancies that are not filled.
So this money that we're sweeping, isn't that what this money's for? To have the money to pay for housing, or is it only the jail division?
These $69,878 that are being swept are being put in general admin, and the court has requested to sweep lap salaries and put them in a contingency, presumably to cover the cost of housing.
Yeah, because we didn't budget anything this past budget
correct.
year for housing of inmates.
Right, but this general admin, does that mean we're gonna use it as we need it, or is it gonna be held?
That is swept up to Commissioner's Court approval, and it's at their discretion. The original intent was to use that in the event that inmates needed to be housed out of county.
Okay, well, before we spend any of this money, whenever we're gonna spend it, will you let us know, hey, this is part of the 69,000?
Those items always come before Commissioner's Court. They are
Okay.
restricted, yes.
Okay.
I have a question in reference to the lap salaries. First of all, I didn't receive notice about the lap salaries being pulled. I'd just like to address the Commissioner's Court. In reference to our fuel budget, it started at 16,000. It's currently at about 5,000. And I was planning to dip into our lap salaries to compensate for the fuel. If the court's going to find some other means to find that money, then I have no objection. But I'll probably be back pretty soon.
How much, well, and that's okay, but I mean, we do not do, to this day, we've never done department, unless it's a specific situation, like your lap salaries go into that, because some departments that are small in nature don't accumulate lap salaries, and they may need some things.
I know I've shifted them before.
Yeah, but tell me about the fuel. What happened with the fuel? What do you mean, the total budget was 16,000?
Exactly.
Okay, and then it's now down to 5.
We're approximately at about 5. I don't have an exact figure. Mr. Villarreal couldn't give me an exact figure.
Okay.
But just by doing the math and the months that we have left, I know that.
Well, how did, I guess my question is, how did 11,000 be used in 3 months or 4 months?
That was prior administration. I have no idea. But the only thing I can add to that is under the new I guess directives that we have from Commissioner's Court for additional warrants being served, that's going to create more fuel consumption. So I expect it to deplete even faster.
Okay. Well,
I was going to object to that, but like I said, I just want Commissioner's Court to be aware that we're going to be out of money soon.
Okay.
And I may need to dip into that fund to transfer some money.
We've never used lab salaries in any department that I know of, except maybe Public Works as a whole, because that's one that's together to change numbers.
I've done it before when I was constable. I used to transfer funds for other, I don't remember if I did it for training or this was
It might
years
have
back.
been training, it might have been
Yeah,
dues, but not lab salaries, though, because we've always swept those.
Well, Martha, can you address really quickly on, I know you don't know this particular budget. Can y'all look at it and find out what happened to 11,000? If that number is accurate, I mean, if it's $11,000 was utilized in 4 months?
We will take a look at it. I know that there was a discussion that Constable Gomez had with our office regarding the fuel budget. And it's my understanding that some of the officers in Constable Precinct 2 were working on one of the grants, Stone Garden, I believe. So the fuel that was being used when they were working Stone Garden was being charged to where the vehicles are normally, which is in general fund. Those reimbursements to general fund are usually done probably every 2 months or 3 months when the billing gets done to the grant. And as the fuel is being charged to the grant, then the entry is done, putting the funds back into the general fund.
Okay, so
fuel.
then
But
It
don't
will
go.
be coming back.
Okay.
But does it go back to their department or
Yes,
does it
it does.
just? Okay.
It does go back to their
So you'll be
department.
getting it back.
Well, let's monitor it anyway and just make sure that.
And another thing to clarify is, these are lab salaries as of the last pay period. They are not, salaries are not being reduced, countywide for the rest of the fiscal year. Rather, it is the time that has already been, expired, lapsed.
For this, for this.
The prior pay period. Not this pay period, the
Correct.
prior pay period.
Correct, but still for this cycle, correct?
No, for
This
the
budget
last,
cycle.
not the paychecks that will be received tomorrow, rather the prior period. The
Correct,
prior pay
under this
period.
fiscal year. under
Yes,
this year.
yes.
Okay, well, just monitor it and
Thank
make
you
sure.
for bringing that up.
All right,
Thank
you.
you. Anything
Move to
else?
approve.
Second.
Martha, you done with that?
Yes, I'm done.
Moved by Commissioner Sanchez, second by Commissioner Gatsa to approve item 3A. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, carries. Claims.
On the claims, I have warrants number 295634 through 296083, warrants number 296088 through 296218. I also have payroll for $1,624,605.13. I have ACH health claims for $149,765.29. I'd like to call the court's attention to warrant number 029505. That is travel reimbursement that is being done for I-69 Austin travel that was undertaken. The per diem that is being reimbursed exceeds the county approved rate by $20.75. There are no meals being claimed for that travel, so that offsets the per diem, but I want to
And
call
that's
the
because
court's
the
attention
rate,
to
the
that.
hotel rate was higher than what we approved?
That's my understanding, yes.
Wow, and I can understand that, because I was in Austin last week, and I had to actually stay in San Marcos, because everything was either solidly booked or outrageous rates.
Correct. And I'd also like to read in two voids, warrant number 294186 for $28. That employee did not travel, so the $28 check was voided. Also, warrant number 295953 for $845.30 will be voided. The amounts that were charged on the travel will change, so that claim is being voided. And I also have another claim that I would like to read in and discuss to the court. That claim is not being presented for your approval yet, but it deals with court registry funds that were distributed. These were funds that were being held in the registry of the court. An individual, a minor that became of age, came to the clerk's office and requested their funds, and this was back in 2006. The records were verified, and this individual was distributed their funds that they had in the registry of the court, and those were $3,000 and some odd dollars. 4 years later, the same individual came back with documents saying, these are my documents. I believe you have funds that you are holding for me, so the information was verified, and the individual did have funds in the registry court, so on a different case number, on another case, relative to another case. So the individual was paid these funds. Okay, this was back in 2010. In January of 2013, this year, the true owner of the first registry funds that were drawn out in 2006 came in with their ID. They had become of age, and they said, I need my funds, and you are holding them for me. So the records were verified, and this particular registry account had already been closed. So there was continuing follow-up that was done, and what actually happened was we had two individuals that came in with the same name, and so consequently, on the first distribution of funds that were done, that individual, those were not her funds. She should have only been entitled to receive the second funds, the second group of funds that she received in 2010. The funds that she received in 2006 did not belong to her. They were for a different cause and a different individual, but since the name...
Same name, but different individual?
Well, there was a variance only in the middle name. One of them had a middle name, and the other one did not have a middle name. But the first and last name were the same.
Do these people have a date of birth?
They have a date of birth, yes.
I would imagine.
Yes.
Is it the same?
I do not believe so.
I mean,
So,
I mean, if the date of birth doesn't correspond, I mean, there's three things you check, is name, date of birth, and social security number, and address, I would imagine.
that is correct.
You know, I mean-
I have a letter that I received yesterday from the district clerk's bookkeeper, from the clerk's bookkeeper, that specifically details what happened. We have had this conversation. I have spoken to the clerk, and what I spoke to Civil, they reviewed all the documents, and what we will be doing, or what we have done, is the county will file a claim under the errors and omissions, because this was an oversight and error. There was no intentional wrongdoing that occurred, best as we can tell. So we will file a claim under the errors and omissions. It carries a $1,000 deductible, and I believe Civil can discuss that at a later date with members of the court as to what action is available to the county at this point.
Can you give us the amounts for each one of those dates?
The amount that was originally distributed in error was $3,300 and some odd dollars.
That's in '06.
That's in '06.
How about '010? Or
In
10?
'010, the individual received, the exact amount that was distributed in 2006 was $3,336.53. The amount that was distributed in 2010 was $606.30.
That's a big difference.
30 cents, yes. And
And the request for 13?
well, the amount of funds that are owed now due to the accrued interest for 6 years, from 2006 to 2013, well, actually 7 years, at last calculation, and that was done on January the 28th, it was $3,861.16. So I expect that to change by a couple of dollars for a few, basically about 15 days of interest.
Martha, how long had the money been in there in 2006? What is it, like
Since-
15 years or?
No, it was in there since 1998. It involves a 1998 case and a...
So the kid would have been about 10 years old when
Yes,
they
about-
got this?
Give or take, yes. Mhm.
So who audits those offices?
They come under our auditing. They come under the external auditors as well.
Yeah, but there's no way to tell, really, if those funds have been dispersed to the wrong
When-
person, unless
when
they
we-
happen to pick that person.
When the distribution was done, the first distribution in 2006, I know what we get now, okay? What information we get is backup. In 2006, I do not know what document was being provided to whom. What I have here is a memo from the minor that became of age in 2006, and she's requesting her funds. It has the person's ID, her social, her date of birth, and there is a judgment that says this is a case number.
But
and
this person in 2006 was the same person that came in 2010?
Correct.
And she knew that she had only gotten one award. Is that correct?
I do not know if that person knew that they had only gotten one award.
Well, but if they came back again, why would they come back and check for more money?
But when they came back again, the first time that they came in, they did not identify a style of the case. So
Right, but in other words, if they had one lawsuit and they got paid on one lawsuit, they know there's money there for me on my lawsuit. Once I go in 2006 and get that money, why am I going to go back in 2010 and ask for it again if I already got paid?
you would think.
In case they forgot.
But
Well, have we tried to get a hold of that person to tell him, hey,
I have not. I don't know if the clerk's office has. You know, what may have happened is when this accident happened, this person was a minor and did not really know. And when she became of age, they told her, go get your money. They have money. So she came in, she got her money. And, you know, maybe 4 years later, you know, people find documents and go through stuff. And then it's like, oh, well, you know, this is, go check because, you know, the money you got was for a 1998. This says a 2001 case, which is, you know, what was your money. So maybe they do. Maybe a lawsuit was entered twice. I have no idea.
well, I think we should ask her for the money back.
This is where we are now. I have had civil review it, and at the end of the day, the liability comes back to Cameron County to make this individual whole. I mean, the true owner of the
Sure.
1998 registry funds. So I would ask the court to allow that claim to be, we can process it tomorrow.
Do you have a funding source?
Well, it'll be a receivable because we filed a claim on the insurance.
Okay.
You know, there will be a discrepancy of $1,000, and, you know, Civil Department can discuss that with Commissioners Court, you know, once they put it on the agenda, if the court wishes. But we do have to make this individual whole. This individual has been waiting for their money for about 2, maybe 3 weeks already.
I'll move to approve that, but I would say we need to try to contact the individual that got the $3,600 windfall and try to get that money back. Or at least 1,000 of it to cover the deductible.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Motion is second. Please note my abstention on the affidavits I provided. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Claims of January the 3rd, 2013. I'm sorry, minutes. Y'all ready?
Motion to table.
Moved by Commissioner Hernandez to table. Do I have a second by Commissioner Benavides to table? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item D, consideration authorization to advertise for bids for the rehab of El Globo Chiquito de la Seca store. Bid number 13202.
The little globe.
Judge, Commissioners, we are ready to start the bidding process on this project. We need a funding source to move forward with the construction, and so we have a estimate of the amount that it's going to be. It's going to be about $250,000 for construction, and then there's some other costs associated with it to pay the architect and do some work that the county was going to do.
So when we passed those COs a year or so ago of, I forget the amount, didn't we allocate some funds from those COs for that?
Not that I'm aware of.
I think we did.
I think we allocated some for the Pacheco building.
Correct.
But not
Well,
for La Seca.
That Pacheco building, you know, that's not going to happen. So I would entertain a motion to transfer it from
How
that.
much did we allocate to that building?
I think it was either 300 or 350, but I don't remember the exact amount. Or maybe it's 500.
$500,000?
And that doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon, so.
Yeah, that would be the best recommendation at this point would be
To transfer it from that? Okay.
Can we do it
Legally?
Legally?
if
don't
we
see why
issued
we
COs on a different project? What was the purpose of that building versus this? What's the difference in the project?
They're both of those buildings have been, they're old and historic, and they're going to be used for meeting, conferences, that type of endeavor for the county. So the Pacheco building, you're looking at a much larger building. It's going to take a lot of money to get that project going. So, you know, the judge,
But
I think,
but the function of the building's the same
yeah.
for
primarily
purposes of the,
to have some space available for different types of meetings, functions that we can have.
and we're not talking about putting the JPs in there or anything. This is
No,
just,
this
No, I
would
think
be
I think it's too small.
This would be a multi-purpose type facility that we can use to have public hearings, have meetings that we can't have here at the building because of logistical issues, parking. So
Wouldn't it, I think some of the discussion was also that to alleviate utilizing the exhibit room at times.
which is the EOC.
Yeah, with the EOC for now, I mean, but the emergency, I mean, the exhibit room is used for almost everything. And this would give us an opportunity to have a little bit smaller venue versus using the exhibit room all the time.
Well, do we have to get bond counsel involved, since it's not for the project that we advertised it for?
Yeah, we'd probably get some, we'd
Can
probably
we
have to
approve
get.
it subject to bond counsel saying it's okay? Is that legally something we can do?
I think that would be appropriate, but we need to check.
Well, if it's subject to bond counsel,
That's exactly
you
what
know, if it's not okay, you just bring it back to us.
Well, bond counsel at an earlier, last year, gave us the okay to shift monies from what we were going to do over at the Brownie Park to do something else, like with the shelter and stuff. They said we could do that just by changing some stuff up.
We'll get with them right after the
Okay, do I
meeting.
hear a motion to approve it subject to the okay from bond counsel?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Garza. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Benavides, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, carries. Item E, consideration, discussion in regards to proposed legislation, House Bill 141, relating to county and municipal land development regulation.
Judge, Commissioners, Pete asked me to put this agenda item for discussion, really for information purposes. This bill has been introduced as a House Bill 141, filed on 11/12/12, and it's authored by Richard Raymond. I'm not familiar with that gentleman, but I presume
Webb
he's a-
County, Laredo.
So, looking at this particular bill, it does have some 7 items there that they're amending in order to improve or bring uniformity to division of property or platting requirements. As you know, the county is a subchapter B, has authority under subchapter B, and we also operate under subchapter A, under general conditions. There's also some amendments here under subchapter C, which we're not part of that. But basically, we're a subchapter B, and we also have adopted the model rules, which is under the water code, and those are the provisions that we have for subdivisions. And if you look in your packet of information, there is a copy of the amendments that are being introduced. And also on the back of that, I also provided for the actual statutes that apply to those amendments. And if you look at, again, at the actual bill, you have Section 1, and Section 1405.021 of the Government Code, that comes out of the Secretary of State statute. And it's a report on state funding for projects or state funding projects. The amendment is G1, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you'll see that the underlying criteria is what they're amending, and basically what they mean here, and I'm going to try to, I'm not very familiar with the bill, but I think what they're trying to say here, by this amendment, is that it provides a process for cities and counties to nominate areas for inclusion on the state list of colonias maintained by the Secretary of State. I think this language adds provisions for that as far as how to go about adding a colonia to the Secretary of State list. Okay? I don't think there was any provisions there.
How were we
before.
doing it in the past?
There was, well,
Well, yes, we did, because we made some changes. We requested through the Secretary of State's office.
yes, sir. Well, there's no provisions right now, the way I understand it, for somebody to outside, to apply or to submit a colonia for review and to be considered, other than that this amendment does provide for that process. And basically what it says there, a system described by subsection G, 1, must include a method for a municipality, county on a form prescribed by the Secretary of State to nominate an area for identification as a colonia. And then 2, may provide for the review of a nominated area by the Texas Water Development Board, the Office of Attorney General, and any other appropriate state agency. So that tells me that through those mechanisms, you can add to that list. And that's legal. I'm not too familiar, sir, but as far as
Because
how do
we've
you
done
go
it
about
through the
that?
Secretary of State in the past.
That's right. And I think it's there, but there was no provision for somebody to add to that list, other than through this amendment now, or proposed amendment, I guess. And if, I don't know the language of it as far as, but that's my understanding, that this provides for that provision. Now, section, does that answer the question, Commissioner? Or
Anybody have any questions?
This is not I don't see it as an action item, it's just a discussion.
No, this is just what's being introduced, is being proposed. That doesn't mean it's going to pass through the legislature.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
We don't even know if it's going to pass here, much
Right.
less legislative.
But that's what's being introduced. I think that takes care of that.
Didn't Senator Zaffarini propose
Yes, sir.
something similar to this?
Actually, this is the same.
This is on the House side?
Yes, sir. And there's a few little changes from the last time it was introduced. It didn't pass. So I think it's coming back.
And are you asking us for our support or resolution or what?
I think what y'all are wanting to see is that, can we support this proposed legislation, which I don't have any problem, from what I see, adding
This
those-
came through the, I think it was either TAC or CUC asking for county input
Support.
and support. So we think it's something that wouldn't hurt us or, impact us, probably help us in the long run. So.
Well, I think we had discussed also when we visited yesterday, it included the 5 acres or less.
And I'm going to go through the rest
Okay.
of the sections.
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
want to make
On
sure.
the
That's-
next page.
I think
One
that
is
was
clear.
the critical piece
Yes,
right
sir.
there.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to go through the rest of them, but just briefly, I wanted to mention that on this particular one. Section 2, which is section 232.022A and D are amended. This subchapter comes out of, or this section comes out of subchapter B, okay? And basically, the change in A is that it has to do with applicability of the planning process. And the language being that is there now, if you look at the second page, it says that this subchapter applies to a county, any part of which is located within 50 miles of an international border, which we do, and then they're striking out or, and then to a county, any part of which is located within 100 miles of an international border. B, that contains the majority of the area of a municipality with a population of less than 250,000, and to which one does not apply, or a county in which the Commission's Court, by order, may adopt the following regulation under Section 16343 Water Code. Okay? So actually, that portion there is what's being added. Now D is a part of section 232.022D, which is the language there. It just want to clarify that anything over 10 acres is exempt from plating.
Isn't that the way it is today?
Right. The only
it's
thing
the
that,
language, the way it's written.
the only thing they're changing is there's other counties that are beyond just border counties that may opt in, and this gives them the opportunity. I think Hayes County is one of them. Webb's on the border.
That's a C, subchapter C county.
Okay.
You
that's
see
a
what I'm saying?
Okay.
Different authority, but basically what they're saying here, that if it's, subchapter A has a provision there that anything over 10 acres, it's exempt from plating. Subchapter B is they're trying to do that, to bring it uniform, where it's subchapter B, anything over 10 acres also can be exempt. So they're trying to bring uniformity between subchapter A and B. And that's what that rule is there. You know, let's see, subchapter A exempts lots that are more than 10 acres. And so subchapter B by this amendment,
10 acres or more.
10 acres or more. So it's just the language or
They're cleaning it up.
Clarifies
So it doesn't impact us, really?
No,
Not
other
really.
than, you know, if it's more than 10 acres, you don't need to plat, but
Yeah.
it brings uniformity to the two subchapters, I guess. And so that's section 2. Section 3, which is 232.023, again, under subchapter B, counties have authority to regulate for platting lots that are 5 acres or less, as well as those between 5 and 10. So this is a new amendment to this subchapter, because it was that gray area, which we didn't have before, as far as can you plat or not plat if you have more than 5 acres but less than 10. So this provision provides for that requirement. So by adding this amendment, it's pretty clear that if you have a lot less than 5 acres, you do have to plat. But also, if you have 5 or more but less than 10, you're required to plat also. That provision wasn't there before. So that brings uniformity between B and C. Now, subchapter C, if you go to the next section there, section 4, that's subchapter C, section 232.072, which is in the next page. That doesn't apply to us, but by adding that language, same language that we have on B, that brings the two subchapters together. So basically, those are the changes there. And again, it talks about 10 acres or more, and in between the 5 and the 10, and if you have less than 5 acres, you do have to plat.
Which is what we have to do now anyway.
You have to do now, yes. So
It doesn't
that's
impact us.
sections 1
At the
through
end of the day.
4. 4, yeah. Section 5 is basically the water code, and they're making changes to that section, which basically that's the area or the statute that the Water Development Board has adopted for their model rules. And basically, those are just standards that they adopted, which we do have in our subdivision rules and regulations. And so that section 5 sets out minimum state standards and model subdivision rules. So that language is just added, or they added that section F, or item F. In the next page, let's see, A, and let's see, G, an application for funds under section 407. Those are provisions for you to let's see, 16343 is amended to clarify that the applicant can apply for and receive grant funding if you meet all those conditions, such as 1, 2, and 3. So in other words, the way I understand it is that if you were in the ETJ of a city and you wanted to apply for funding or grant funding, you couldn't do it if a city did not adopt the model rules. In other words, so if the city said, no, I'm not going to adopt the model rules, then the applicant in a ETJ could not get funding. So by doing this, it clarifies that, or adds to the language here that it doesn't matter if the city adopts model rules or not, as long as you, the applicant, adopts the model rules, then you can apply for funding. And that applies to city, county, and or ETJ and county. And basically, that's all that is, section 5. And the rest of it just has a, when it becomes into effect, which is September 2013, if it passes, I guess. And that's pretty much what's being introduced. It's a little complicated, but these proposals or these amendments are not in conflict with our current subdivision rules. They do enhance them, and I would recommend to the court to consider
To support it?
supporting the amendments.
I think Mr. Jim Allison, who's here,
Oh, I'm sorry.
maybe wants
Okay.
to,
Lend some.
everybody can wake up now. That's pretty stimulating.
Thank you,
Jim.
Thank you, Judge, members of the court. My name is Jim Allison. I'm the General Counsel of the County Judges Commissioner Association of Texas. This is the same bill that Representative Raymond introduced for us last session. Senator Zaffarini introduced it on the Senate side. Last time, because it has a broad caption, it's subject to amendments, and it picked up some negative amendments last time that would have prevented, frankly, in the current enforcement that we have. This bill is endorsed by the State Association and the Conference of Urban Counties. It will clarify, as was pointed out, the present problem with under the model rules of 5 acres or less, and under the remainder of Chapter 232, you have jurisdiction up to 10 acres. So we do ask for your support of the bill. It will, again, probably be a placeholder bill that others will try to add amendments to, so we will have to monitor it carefully and work with the other various interested groups on what the final outcome will be.
Okay, thank you. All right, do I hear a motion to acknowledge?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Gatsa, second by Commissioner Benavides. All in favor?
We'll bring a resolution next meeting then.
Thank you, sir.
Signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Item F, consideration authorization of salary slot reclass and salary adjustments for the DA's office. I see Renee here, but is this the same thing that we've done the last 2 meetings, rearranging? Are we going to continue seeing some of these for a little while longer?
Move to approve.
Okay. All right, moved by Commissioner Sanchez, second by Commissioner Hernandez. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. On item G, I think we're talking about that after executive session?
If you all believe you need to visit about some of the legal issues here, then fine. If you're otherwise prepared, I don't think we necessarily need to.
Okay, are y'all prepared? Or you want to talk about an executive session?
I did the executive session.
After? Okay, let me pass. On item H, consideration authorization to reclassify the job title Security Guard from Slot 18, budget number 830-6600 to Park Ranger.
Yes, good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. We're asking for, I guess, permission to reclassify the security guard position that we currently have available to our Park Rangers position. And this will be an additional officer that we'll add to the Park Rangers.
Will this be the same person or somebody else?
No, this will be the same person.
Is it an empty slot or someone currently in that position?
Nobody's currently in that position.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
Is the cost the same?
No, sir.
No.
No, it's going to go from 19,778 to, I believe, 32,763.
Do you have the money in the budget?
Yes, the monies are going to come out of our fund balance or from lat salaries.
And right now, what is that guard's duties?
At this time, During the peak season, what we would do, we would hire this guard to guard the Isla Blanca toll gate from 11 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning. The gate closes at 11, and there's a lot of people that try to go into our parks.
We've had damage too, right?
Well, yeah, we had a few people that are under the influence that go into the park, and not only that, there's been a little bit of vandalism and
But
things of that
not
nature.
on golf carts.
Not on golf carts, yeah, exactly. But, this would add an additional officer, and it'll also help us, if that officer needs to cite somebody, he's got the power to cite somebody, and also patrol the area.
But let me
as
ask a
well.
question. You gave us two funding sources. One was lap salaries, and the other one was fund balance. Fund balance is not a good idea. Because what are you going to do next year?
Real quick, back on the question Commissioner Sanchez had. When you all approved the budget in October, this position was originally going to be a person that would patrol the park. Now, since we have the Park Ranger Division, it just made sense to move that slot into that.
Yeah, I have no,
division.
I have no issue with that.
So-
Mine is more on the budget side. What do you, if you go to fund balance, and what do you do next year to fund it? I mean, how are you going to adjust your budget next year?
That I would have to get back with you, Judge, on this thing. Right now, I know that we're looking at lap salaries.
But do you have enough lap salaries right now to cover the end of the fiscal
Yes,
year?
we do. Yes, and
To the end of the fiscal year?
to the end of fiscal year, yes, according to, meeting with our Parks Director, he said that we do, and we also, said we also have some monies elsewhere that we could use to cover.
Oh, yeah,
this.
that's fine. I just,
Yes.
again, the fund balance is something that you really don't touch.
Yeah, I think we would just use funds out of the park system and not dip into
Okay,
the fund
that's
balance.
fine.
It's the enterprise system, the funds, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And they have plenty, right?
Well,
Okay.
Yes, they do.
I wouldn't say
Ma-
that you have plenty because.
Well, plenty to cover the cost of the salary.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking. If you have enough to cover that within the budget that
Yes.
you've got. I hear a motion by
Just
Commissioner, did you make that
Benavides.
motion?
I did.
I just,
Commissioner Benavides, a second by Commissioner Gatsa.
just one question, and since the chief's here, I'll ask you. Chief, are you going to make sure someone's covering those areas at night since we're not going to have that person there anymore?
Correct. It would benefit the county because not only now that the officer's up there is going to be a police officer, he's going to be guarding the gate.
He's armed.
Plus he's armed, patrolling the area, and if anything happens, he can react himself. He doesn't have to call in anybody.
But you're not going to take him and put him somewhere else. You're still going to leave him there.
He was only working an 8-hour shift, remember that. It was only in the evenings.
Right.
In the evenings, somebody will be there. If
Uh,
you
uh,
drive up there and he's not there, then he's out there patrolling the grounds, and then he'll come back and stay up front.
But he'll be basically appointed to cover the park?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
One other question. Is that the only security guard that we had out there?
I believe so.
That was the only one, right? We only had that late night shift?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, because what happens is that the park closes, but you can still come in with your credit card, or you can still come into the park, and that's why you have to have somebody up there and try and figure out who's supposed to be there and who's not. Especially we coming into these concerts now. We're going to have a lot of people trying to get in after the concerts.
Okay. Any other questions? Had a motion, a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item carries. Item I, consideration and possible action to cancel Cameron County CAP project, Isla del Carmen Bird Sanctuary Award.
Yes, this project is a county CAP project. Back in 2008, Cameron County, established a committee to review these grant applications, and this project was recommended for funding by the Cameron County Commissioners Court. At that time, the chairman of the committee was the port director for the Port of San Benito Navigation District. And this project here is a project that falls with on port property. And he was all in favor of it, and we recommended for funding. U.S. Fish and Wildlife funded this project back in 2012. Well, actually, they funded it to Ocean Trust. Ocean Trust is a sub-grantee. So when Ocean Trust went and solicited the permission of the port to do this project, the former port director, was no longer there. Now they have a new port director. So he brought it before its commission, and the commission denied the entry to doing this project.
The new commission, the new port?
Well, actually, not the new port director, but the current commission that has still been there from
Which was
2000.
the same commission that was there then?
Yes, it was the same commission. And what this project was, it's a bird habitat project. It's a small little island between Port Isabel and Long Island. And a lot of pelicans use this island. So what they wanted to use this, make this island a bird habitat, island. And what would happen is that a lot of boaters would dock on this island. And some boaters have dogs, and they would run around that island and scare all the birds. So we wanted to protect that island and just use it for, for bird habitat. And the port director at that time, who was the chairman of the committee who evaluated these grants, he said, "Man, this is a great project."
Well, we recommended it.
It was recommended, and
we presented it to the board of directors of the San Benito Port Isabel Navigation District.
Yes.
And it was okay.
It was
the
okay.
Same board of directors are there now, but it's not okay.
They say that they don't wanna proceed with this project, and
for whatever reasons,
So what they did, since they don't have permission to do this project on this property, since Ocean Trust doesn't have that permission, we had no choice but to cancel the project.
Move to cancel.
Move to cancel.
Second.
Okay. The next slide. Oh, go ahead.
Moved by Commissioner Gatsa, second by Commissioner Hernandez to cancel the CF project, Isla del Carmen Bird Sanctuary. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item J, consideration and possible action to submit a request to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to reallocate Cameron County CF project funds in the amount of $25,000.
Okay, on this project, Ocean Trust was awarded another project, and that's it's the Cameron County Native Plant Center, which is going to be built on county property. So what they're asking is if they could use the $25,000 from the Isla del Carmen and reallocate it to the Cameron County Native
Move
Plant
to approve.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Sanchez. I know you stayed up all night preparing for this.
No, as a matter of
But that's what you wanted,
Second by
right?
Commissioner Gatsa. Discussion.
Yes.
Sorry. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item K, consideration authorization to advertise for RFP for a possible development of 13.073 acre parcel, former Jeremiah's.
Yes, Judge Commissioners, we're just asking for some permission to advertise for an RFP, see there's a potential developer that can develop the Jeremiah's tract of land.
Okay, do I hear?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Sanchez, second by Commissioner Gatsa. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Item L, discussion and possible action on implementing the trash bag return program year.
Okay, Judge Commissioners, I don't know if, I know the backup information was sent to y'all is the daily entrance report for our parks. And, we met with Javier Mendez, the Parks Director, myself, and Marty Peña. He's the bridge manager. We all met in regards to this item. One of the things that in regards to the north end is, if you look at it, there's quite a few days that it's slow, and it's not. I don't think it'll be feasible, to hold this program year round, because there's days that we're not even making any money, and we're gonna have to hire additional help for this project. First of all, you have a toll collector, and then you got somebody working, with issuing out the refund, getting the trash bag, throwing it in the dumpster, and issuing out that refund. But if you could give us some more time to continue studying this, and we could get back to you on this.
Right now, we have it during peak season,
We
right?
have it during peak season, and it's been working great. It's a great program, and I'll tell you what, there's many times that container, 30-yard container is full of trash bags. All that trash could end up on our county
So we're
beaches.
saving the beaches.
We're saving, yes.
Awesome.
And, in regards to Isla Blanca Park, let me give you this right here.
You sent us that, you emailed it to us.
Yeah, do you have it?
I received a call from Javier yesterday, and he asked me to relate to the court that he'd like to table this so that you could look at it.
I'll second that.
give us a recommendation as to when you want it implemented. That way, when you bring it to us, like
Okay.
what dates you want it,
The dates, okay.
right? That's
Yeah, next
Yeah,
time you
'cause-
bring it, say we want it from this date to this date. That way we can take action on it.
Okay, yeah, because Isla Blanca Park, if you don't mind, it's a very unique situation. You know, we have 600 RV guests there. In order to make this work, we're gonna have to move the toll collection system further into Channelview Road. If you look at the map, there's, in blue, there's a line that says proposed toll gate. It's right past the Dolphin Cove area. It's marked there proposed, you know, we'd have to move this, and we're talking to TRMI and see if they could provide us with two types of passes, one for RV guests, because we're gonna have two different gates, one for RV guests and the other one for our daily use vehicles. And but we're looking at to see how this is really gonna work at Isla Blanca Park. I think it's a great idea, but you know, we have to look at. Not only that, on our annual passes, we have a lot of people that purchase annual passes that use Isla Blanca Park more than what they do 5 and 6. You know, that areas, so that's another thing that we have to look at as well.
Okay.
And that's the only way we can develop or do something with Dolphin Cove, so that it could become more attractive.
That's true too.
Which is the other, I think, Sophie, you and I had that discussion.
Yes, sir.
You know,
Yes.
as to what we can do to make Dolphin Cove more attractive instead
Yes.
of a dump as we have it now.
And that's one of the reasons that, one of the things that Dolphin Cove, you know, in order to go to Dolphin Cove, you would have to pay into the gate to go to that establishment. But now it's, you know, it'll be an opportunity where they don't have to pay to go to that establishment, yes.
Well, I had a motion, a second to table this item. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, item carries. Item M, consideration and approval of interlocal agreement between Cameron County and City of Brownsville. Do you want to defer this till after executive session?
Yes.
Okay, move on to item N, consideration of approval of interlocal agreement between Cameron County and BISD.
Same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Item O, we've already done that. Item P, public hearing to receive information and evidence from interested parties and the public, including sworn testimony, to discuss and consider Larry Mark Polsky's request for approval of amendments to the permit granted December 2010, needed for his planned development of Sea Breeze Estates. Do I hear a motion to open public hearing?
So moved.
By Commissioner Gatsa, second by Commissioner Benavides. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in a public hearing.
We can discuss it back there.
Somebody ordered lunch for us?
I didn't look.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Let this presentation go first, and the public can respond to it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
This one? Right. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Okay. Was that given to us at the appropriate time? It's like, was there a copy here at one from the jail? I don't want to miss the opening statement.
You guys go first.
It's a public hearing.
It's a
Did somebody
public
sign
hearing.
up or not?
No, but we don't have no signature. Anybody that wants to speak, Ms. Polsky, if you'd like to go first, or how do you want to go? Okay, we can do that. That's fine, sir. All right, now's the time for the public to begin with their comments. What I don't want to do, if we can do it, to avoid redundancy, is have somebody, 12 people speak on the exact same issue. The same thing for those proponents of the application. I don't think we want to listen to 10 or 15 people in support of it. So if you can just kind of, either talk amongst yourselves, or if everybody has a different issue, everyone can speak. But if we're all going to be talking about the same thing, it's just kind of over and over and over again. So we'll just take it from there. So who's going to be first on the?
Or they can say, I support.
Or I support
I adopt
what
the
he just
comments
said.
of the
Yeah, we can
other
do that
person.
as well.
The way the members of Congress
So
do
who's
it.
going to go first? Mr. Nixon.
I associate.
I yield to the gentleman from Los Indios.
I concur.
Okay, where's the?
How's it going today, guys?
Hey, Rob.
I'd like to make some comments on behalf of the Surfrider Foundation about the Sea Breeze Estates and the retaining wall that's being constructed right now. It's the opinion of the Surfrider Foundation South Texas chapter that the Cameron County Commissioners Court should deny the permit variance to Sea Breeze Estates and Mr. Larry Polsky and order the removal of the illegal retaining wall for the simple reason that the construction of a retaining wall within 200 feet of the line of vegetation on the Gulf of Mexico facing beaches in Texas is illegal under Title 31, Part 1, Chapter 15, Subchapter A, Rule 15.6 of the Texas Administrative Code. It is against state law to construct such a wall, pure and simple. However, since commissioners and the Dune Protection Committee feel the need to keep considering granting the variance for the illegal wall, knowing the state of Texas has filed an injunction suit against Mr. Polsky, who had continued to construct his retaining wall, and in spite of the order, and now has been served with a temporary restraining order, we would like to elaborate on why this retaining wall is a negative impact on the beach it sits on, the neighboring properties of north and south, and the finances of Cameron County, and the public taxpayer, and the public beaches of Cameron County. First and foremost, the argument that has been put forward in the debate about the retaining wall with the General Land Office and with the Commissioners Court, which essentially boils down to the city of South Padre Island did it, so we should be able to do it too, is a red herring that should be cautiously looked at by the Commissioners Court. The setting of the South Padre Island historical building line by the Attorney General was set up some 30 years ago, and at the time, the HBL was approximately 400 feet back from the water line. This is a fact that seems to be left out of the argument, but is brought up again in a study y'all will be having a workshop on today entitled Cameron County Erosion Analysis, which contains essential geological and economic information that the Commissioners Court should be considering for allowing such a structure to go in, but ironically is scheduled for after this hearing this afternoon. The short of it is this: comparing the city of South Padre Island's HBL that was set up after substantial development had already been put in, and to the county beaches, which is essentially a blank slate, is comparing apples to oranges. The beaches within the city limits of South Padre Island varies greatly from that of the northern Cameron County beaches. The blaring disparity is the fact that the Cameron County beach is eroding at approximately 12 feet a year, which is up to 4 times more rapidly than the city beaches in South Padre Island. Has the city of South Padre Island made some mistakes in the past? Definitely, most certainly. The development of the area around La Quinta Inn was a huge mistake the city's literally been paying for ever since it was constructed in the form of beach fill projects as often as can be done. However, the owner did learn a lesson and built considerably further landward with a wider dune field between his new Hilton property next door and the water line. Recently, the new Schlitterbahn Beach Resort built a deck past the HBL illegally within city limits. The city shoreline task force requested it be removed immediately, and Schlitterbahn complied. Just because South Padre Island did it doesn't mean that it was right and correct. There is no reason to repeat the mistakes of the past that have cost millions in taxpayer resources on a local and state level. Since March 2010, a total of $9.5 million has been spent on beach fill on the northern city beaches as a result of the erosional hotspot. Of that, $1.1 million came out of the city coffers. Of course, the city of South Padre Island has a certified dune protection plan and eligible for state funding, something that Cameron County could risk losing if they grant this permit today. Furthermore, it is put forth in the Cameron County erosion analysis that Cameron County more than likely will not meet any state funding requirements for beach fill for perhaps a decade because there is not enough development, ironically, to warrant tax subsidized protection. Yet the commissioners and County Dune Protection Committee are considering permitting a retaining wall that will almost immediately require such a scheme to keep it off the public beach. There is a reason that there are coastal rules regarding retaining walls and how close they can be located to the beach, the active beach, and accelerate. The rules exist to keep them off the active beach and accelerate beach erosion and can be harmful to the public beach as well as the properties adjacent to them. When water rushes up to the wall, it is bounced back without dampening the force of the energy exacerbating erosion. At the same time, water will accelerate along a retaining wall and cause the washing out laterally of sand adjacent to it, causing damage to properties on either side. With the extreme close proximity of the Sea Breeze retaining wall to the public beach being only 10 feet along with a 12 feet of erosion annually, it is quite possible that this structure would be within the public beach easement in a matter of a few years and then be impeding public use of that beach, violating the Open Beaches Act and opening up an entirely new realm of legal problems for Cameron County. Furthermore, according to the Cameron County erosion analysis, the placement of an engineered dune at location seaward of the Sea Breeze Estates would more than likely not be viable for more than a year and be overwhelmed quickly. The Surfrider Foundation South Texas chapter believes, as Mr. Polsky does, that this will set a precedent for future development on Cameron County beaches. I believe he said Cameron County has a philosophical decision to make, either grant him the permit and make Cameron County developable and attractive to investors, or deny the permit and leave the beaches in their so-called pristine state. We don't think it's that black and white. We believe that there are ways for Cameron County to responsibly develop these beaches in a sustainable way without having the Sea Breeze Estate set the precedent now in a way that completely disregards the realities of the area they are constructing in. Some of these options are put forth in the Cameron County Erosion Analysis Study that we have submitted to y'all through email yesterday. The county's developmental standards should not be set by reactively granting variances on development projects that went beyond the realm of the county's own dune protection plan and state law. Finally, the Cameron County Commissioners should seriously consider the consequences of granting this permit variance for the Sea Breeze Estates. There is a real possibility that the county's current and proposed dune protection and beach access plan will be decertified, having drastic financial ramifications on the county and the county parks. If a plan decertification happens, Cameron County cannot collect beach user fees at the county parks at the gates, resulting in the degradation of those parks, including facilities, the reduction of law and public safety services, and beach maintenance, including trash pickup, and the very successful Cash for Trash program, resulting in a quality of life deficit for the visitors of Cameron County beaches. In return for jeopardizing the public's enjoyment of these well-established and loved parks, the county will risk using the same public's tax revenue to defend the very single development that decided to build an illegal wall and pick a fight with the state. It is our request to the Cameron County Commissioners today to deny the permit, avoid the possible economic, safety, and recreational stress to the Cameron County citizens that granting the permit could cause, and have Mr. Polsky fight his own battle against the state. Please deny the permit and order the wall removed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Next.
I want to repeat what Mr. Nixon said, but anyway, I'm Bill Best. I live out at the island. And about a month ago, I went out to the project to see what was going on.
Yeah, Bill Best.
And, excuse me.
Good to see you, Bill.
Yeah, good to see you guys. And I noticed that, you know, Highway 100 runs parallel to the Gulf. And between Highway 100, as it goes north, there's a line of sand dunes. It's a buffer zone. It's kind of protection, and it provides protection from the Gulf. I drove up there, and I saw that a portion of those sand dunes had been torn out where this project has already been going on before the injunction occurred, and the state of Texas stopped it. This was about a month ago when we had a norther, and the tides are a little high. And I looked, and I saw the water wasn't really that far from where they were actually building. Now, when I wanted to build a little bitty boat dock on my land on the bay side, I made sure I had permission from the GLO, Corps of Engineers, everybody I needed to get approval from, to avoid having the cost of tearing it out and maybe paying a penalty. Well, here it seems like the GLO has already filed a suit, an injunction, against these developers, and pending an investigation. And if this investigation turns out that and finds that this development has violated Texas law, then the county, like an individual, is going to be hit with costs, remedial costs, and with penalties, which ultimately falls upon the taxpayer. So I just wanted to share this experience with you guys and what I've observed. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next. Next.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm a county resident. I'm Madeline Sandifer, live in Laguna Vista, and I use the beach a lot. And I just want to speak in support of Mr. Nixon and the Surfrider Foundation this morning. I hope you will give it your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Good morning. My name is Mary Helen Flores. I'm here on behalf of Friends of Vista Blanca. Please be aware that many people who are unable to be here this morning are very concerned with the fallout from the decisions you'll make today. We're really sick and tired of good money going after bad due to the willingness of this commission to take on litigation stemming from poor decision making. For example, the 3 years of litigation against concerned citizens the county undertook when we were trying to save Vista Blanca Park from private development. And we did win that one. Another example is the ongoing litigation against the Tompkins heirs that the county has undertaken for building that Hilton Hotel on Andy Boy Parkland. Both of those lawsuits stemmed from the commission going against the deed restrictions on that land. The Andy Boy litigation might ultimately cost us the park itself or the equivalent dollar amount. We don't know yet. Please don't resort to allowing illegal beach development in order to make a quick buck. Instead, demand the county beach park system be managed as the treasure that it is. Stop turning a blind eye to the chronic mismanagement and pilfering. I would still like to know how much was stolen from our gate fees and by whom. I and the folks who couldn't be here today implore you to do the right thing on our behalf and don't allow any illegal development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. All right. Is that all the public comments in opposition of the permit? Okay, Mr. Polsky, or whomever's next.
I think Judge Mr. Wells wants to make an opening statement here.
Okay. State your name and whom you represent.
Good morning, sir. My name is Doyle Wells. I do represent the Cameron County Beach and Dune Committee. What we're going to be considering here, if I may, I'd like to make it very quick, is that just specific issues versus the greater, and this application we're looking at here today. Presently, approximately 75% of the property in the Gulf Beach north of Andy Bowie is in the hands of a few owners, and all of whom may be affected by what happens here today. Cameron County acquisition owns approximately 8,000 feet of property. You've recently approved a similar erosion protection dune system fence for them, and they're in the process of taking care of their own land and benefit the county beach. Also, the Pinnell family owns 3 miles of property north of the city limits, and they're watching closely what can be done in the property. Mr. Polsky property and these other landowners make it owners to make the best out of their ownership rights. They will need a variance from the rules and regulations in their own existing dune plan. The court approved the revised plan, but the GLO has not approved the plans or the variances that would be needed to receive approval. Mr. Polsky's application brings to issues to focus that not only for his permit, but for permits that will eventually come and be able to develop along Park Road 100. The variances and decisions need to be made in the future of what we've outlined in the amended dune protection plan that you approved last August. Specifically, we'd like to have a level playing field of the line of vegetation determination according to Chapter 61.016 and .017 and the TAC rules, Chapter 15. The retaining walls. Folks have to be able to understand what they can do with retaining walls, where and how. Small pools need to be considered. Modest size or for hotels. That's in the plan amendments we're talking about. Reasonable use of brick pavers and driveways, patios, pool decks, walkways, and access drives into individual properties. Mr. Polsky also wants approval to build a fence, footing, or retaining wall on his seaward property line, which is about 10 feet or more beyond the dune conservation zone, beyond the public beach area. There, the committee recommended to you that the GLO approve the line of vegetation at mean low tide plus 200 feet as outlined in statute, and build a building line in the westernmost limit of the dune conservation zone. This is what we've recommended. In respect to Mr. Polsky's permit request, a variance for the policy approved in the revised plan is still waiting GLO approval, and the retaining walls, if allowed, will need a variance as well as a location for it to move. The bottom line is, this is a very small piece of property. There are no practical alternatives to what he needs to do to protect his property at the same time and protect the public beach area. We have the witnesses here, and we have the evidence that Mr. Polsky is asking to be approved. It's done routinely inside the city limits of South Padre Island. This evidence will hopefully show you the extent of the Cameron County and its landowners are unable to develop, but under the same rules and regulations, the county residents have been allowed to develop their property as it was. Specifically, and my history is also, I served in the city's Dune Protection Committee several years. I was also an alderman for several years. What the county has asked GLO to do is what they did with the city back in the beginning when I was with the group, got approval. And the Attorney General did approve the historic building line. Essentially, the variances granted to the city in their certified plan of today and the subsequent amended plan stems from Texas Administration Code 15.31B6, which states, a local government may request General Land Office certification of a plan or a plan amendment that includes a variance regarding any requirements or prohibitions in this chapter. South of the city, they're allowed retaining walls, they're allowed big pavers, and they're allowed pools. The language in the city's plan says that pools shall be considered pervious. I never understood it then. I don't understand it today, but we didn't argue and pools are built and considered to be pervious and not count against the allocation of impervious material allowed to be used.
Could you define pervious?
Pervious, water will run through it.
So they're saying that water will run through a pool?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't venture to go there. I guess I could rationale to say the water in the pool is pervious, but the concrete bowl is not. The question comes into play that the GLO doesn't want pools allowed within 1,000 feet of mean high tide is because you shall not alter or pave, improve the area outside the habitable structure. So it gets into a nebulous, what are they talking about? I'd like for you
Is that a rule or is that?
Interpretation. Okay. It's part of our plan. We've amended you amended the county's plan to allow for more sensible clarification from what we had in the previous plan because we had issues. And what we're looking for today is an opportunity to take and give full consideration to all of the things that are being discussed here. The questions that were raised earlier in public comment have merit and they should be listened to. And certainly make a determination that, when speaking on behalf of the Beach and Dune Committee, we gave serious consideration. Does it impact the public beach? What will happen if the water does get up to the improvements we're talking about? And we weighed all those things there. And we welcome the opportunity to present this evidence to you today. As you know, we've been dealing with this for 3 years, and you amended your plan to give some common sense to the proposed development. So with your indulgence, please allow us the opportunity to present the evidence that we looked at and considered and have brought to you at different times. And I will say it is a unanimous support for this project. So please give us a chance to present our evidence to you. I will take any questions.
Next, on the kind of outline we're working with.
Bruce, are we out of public hearing? We need to come out of
No,
public
we're
hearing.
going to let this public hearing kind of continue, but this
Beautiful.
section of it is going to have to do with the sworn testimony.
Perfect.
Okay? And so for the witnesses, I know Mr. Wells wants to give sworn testimony, Mr. Houston, Mr. Holdar, Mr. Polsky perhaps wants to give, and Mr. Holdar is here. If you all would, stand up and hold up your right hand. Where'd the judge go?
Yeah.
I guess the judge, the judge pro tem here will have to swear you in here.
I think, first of all, I want to make sure that these people follow the same rules that the other side did, and let's not go over the same issue over and over again. Try to bring us some new evidence every time somebody speaks. Otherwise, we're going to be here for hours. And did we swear in the first group?
We didn't, because we didn't expect to have testimony, but we could hear testimony from them if you wish to swear them in.
I'd like you to.
I'll
let you.
Well, see, I don't have the official capacity to do that.
Is there a certain thing we have to form?
Well, yes, if you'll look at our little outline there, Commissioner, as Judge Pro Tem, here comes the judge.
He doesn't know you.
We need to swear somebody in.
Well, before we swear anybody in, if we were in a public hearing, why didn't we swear the people that spoke before them?
I couldn't hear that, Commissioner.
If we were in a public hearing, why did we not swear in the folks like Mr. Best and, the folks from the Surf Rider, Mr. Nixon and Mary Helen, all these? Why didn't we swear them in just like we're swearing this folks in?
Well, we certainly can do that. We can do it right now if you want to.
Well, I don't want them to feel that their testimony, their comments, or their thoughts of what they presented are of any less value to me making a decision as someone that is being sworn in. Because whatever they said,
Well, but I think there's, I would assume that what they were stating, and Bill, you're the lawyer, is more of observations and opinions and maybe reading some of the statutes, whereas they're providing not opinions for the most part, but more factual information. That's what I would assume the difference would be, but
I don't know.
Well, I was a witness to what I testified to. I don't mind taking it.
Did you tell the truth?
Swearing that I was telling the
I mean, if y'all want, we can do that, but it's kind of after the fact. I mean, I can say, did you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, but to so help you God? I mean, if you want to do that, it makes it more...
I guess for purposes of what Commissioner Garza says, if anybody wishes to be sworn in that's previously spoke,
they can do that
we'll
now.
do that.
Stand up.
If you want to. Exactly.
Stand them up, man.
If y'all want to do that, that's fine.
As a matter of fact, our little, our little outline provides for the swearing in of witnesses, from the public.
Right.
So they're welcome to do that, Judge.
All right. I guess raise your right hand.
First of all, let's identify the names of all the people here. We have Doyle Wells, Jim Holder, Herb Houston, Larry Polsky, we have Bill Best, we have Rob Nixon. I'm sorry I missed your name, ma'am. All right.
Madeline
and so,
Sandifer.
For the record, all of those have been identified, and will you take the oath?
Okay,
All
are
right.
you all ready? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And then let the record reflect all of the witnesses named have been sworn and taken the oath.
Except from, I think Mary Helen. Was it?
Well, she left. Okay, all right. Okay, let's proceed.
All right, Mr. Houston, I think, is going to give you an outline of the procedural history, just to let you know where we've been on all of this.
Real quickly, Judge, Commissioners, like Doyle mentioned, this has been an ongoing effort for some years. This first came to you in 2009. You approved the permit. There was some threatening correspondence and communications from the General Land Office. You subsequently revoked the permit.
Speak into the mic a little bit better.
I'm sorry. You subsequently revoked the permit. Then back in December of 10, you again approved the permit request for all the items mentioned. It was to be a security fence at that time in lieu of a retaining wall, but it was approved. Now we come before you with amendments to that plan that was approved in 2010, requesting a definitive answer on the retaining walls, the line of vegetation, the pools, and the pavers. That's the history.
All right. As far as your request goes then, Mr. Houston, and all the work on the Dune Committee at this point, what has the GLO historically said about it, and what position have they taken, if you can outline that for us?
Well, the General Land Office wants an LOV determination at 300 feet. As Mr. Nixon pointed out.
A what determination?
Line of vegetation determination.
Okay.
The line of vegetation basically determines the boundary of the public beach.
And how is that determined?
You'll have expert testimony to that in just a second, if you can hold on. They wanted a 300-foot line of vegetation. They do not want any retaining walls in front of the homes, although you're allowed a retaining wall in back of your home, but it just can't be any closer than 200 feet to the LOV. They want no swimming pools within 1,000 feet of mean high tide. They want no use of brick pavers, whether it be for a driveway, a private drive, or a sidewalk. That's basically nutshells what they're objecting to.
What about
and how long have they had that there?
The objections?
No, or that policy about the 1,000 feet?
In the last year and a half.
So when they built the Hilton Garden Inn, is their pool at 1,000 feet?
Their pool is past the 200 feet that they require, but as you know, the Sea Garden Hilton is covered up with brick pavers, which they don't allow anymore. They wouldn't allow that.
Well, but didn't you say that it was 1,000 feet?
That's right. The pool would not be allowed at the Sea Garden Hilton.
Yet they approved it?
Yes, this body did, and the General Land Office.
But the General Land Office approved that?
Yes, sir.
And had their position or policy been the same when they approved that and today, or have they changed it?
You've had different personnel go in and out of those offices, and it seems like policy changes with the rotating doors.
What about the law? Has the law changed?
No.
So the law is the same today as it was when the Hilton Garden Inn got their pool approved?
The law is the same as it was in 1994 when the city of South Padre Island adopted their plan.
Okay, but they did approve the Hilton Garden Inn to have a pool put in less than 1,000 feet from high mean tide, you said?
From mean low tide.
Mean low tide.
Well, no, I'm sorry, the 1,000 feet is from mean high tide.
And that's where the pool can
Oh,
be?
yes.
Okay. Go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt, I just had some questions.
Let's touch on this right quick. Tell him what the significance is in terms of developable land, depending on where that line of vegetation is set.
If I could get you to look at exhibit number 4 real quick. This is a survey done by Mr. Jim Holdart, who made a determination of the extent of the public beach at that time. And you can see the 200-foot measurement from the mean low tide line of minus 1.02. So you got the 200 feet. You see where Mr. Polsky's land, Seabreeze, sits back from that. Now, if a general land office gets another 100 feet, basically you've taken a third of his property. He's not allowed then to put his private drive into the property. And of course, he's not allowed the swimming pools throughout his property. And the retaining walls, according to the general land office, the retaining wall would be about 100 feet off the west property line.
And then there was one other issue, wasn't there, Mr. Houston, about the location of the roadway that would provide access to the 5 or 6 lot subdivision?
The general land office was saying they want no parallel roads within 200 feet of that line of vegetation. So we're right at close to 200 feet, but it's off of our 200 feet LOV. If the general land office gets their 300 feet and then another 200 feet, like I said, it's not developable because then the road shifts so far back, the lots don't meet the minimum requirements per county regs as far as square footage.
I think you were going to give some specific examples of the so-called inconsistent treatment between what's happening on the island, on the other side of the city limits, and what's being, stated that will be the policy on points
Excuse me,
north.
I think what we need to do is let you all do your, do your thing, and just, Bruce, if we can, just, if I have a question, and members of the court have a question, that we can defer, but it may appear that you're kind of asking him to say stuff, and I want you to speak on your own versus that, all right? Do you follow me?
Okay, it's only in the fact that, Judge, we were going to address these issues one-on-one. We're going to talk
That's
about
fine,
the line of vegetation.
But you should know those.
Yes, I know them.
Right, so just do that without,
I mean, this is
without our
like
legal
leading
advice
the
here.
witness, okay? And we're here it's a public hearing.
I understand.
The public hearing. If
You know what I mean,
we wanted
it
a legal
just,
opinion, we'd go to the back.
I guess we could have asked Rob, hey, Rob, don't you want to do this and say that? So I just think, in all fairness, okay?
Well, I will start then, if that's all right.
Yeah, start.
Please. I want to refer to Exhibits 3 and 3A. The first one, 3A, is an aerial view of that whole area. You see the Seabreeze site in the top right-hand corner, more or less. But what's evident in this picture is that there has been a distinct washovers caused by past hurricanes. And in other words, you've had a very substantial obliteration of the line of vegetation because there is no consistent line of vegetation that makes that public beach.
When you say line of vegetation, what do you mean? Where the grass is growing or seaweed's growing, or, I mean?
The line of vegetation is typically a line of continuous vegetation that moves landward or west. If you got a continuous line of vegetation that moves landward and to the west, then everything seaward of that line is a public beach. However, in the areas where your line of vegetation has been obliterated, or in areas where you've had undue human trafficking or there's no vegetation, there's a distinct limit of that public beach at 200 feet. And if you look at,
Okay, and just before you go on, because I've seen areas out there where there's no vegetation at all. So in the absence of vegetation, how do you determine line of vegetation?
right, if you look at Exhibit 3B, that's the beachfront at Seabreeze. You see the hay bales there, they form sort of a U. That's the beachfront, that's Seabreeze. And except for those few sprigs of grass right in the foreground, there really is no vegetation whatsoever. Now you ask me, what do you do in the absence of a distinct line of vegetation? If you'll go to 2A, Exhibits 2A and 2B.
Can you put them on the screen when you refer
Yes.
to them?
Yeah.
Because I can't see where the light's off.
I'm sorry. Go to 2A. Go back. 2A is basically the Administrative Code 15.3, and you'll see in yellow on points 1, 2, and 3, if the line of vegetation shall not extend inland further than 200 feet from the seaward line of mean low tide. So basically what, and all these 200-foot limitations are here. If there is no vegetation, if it has been obliterated, if there's no constant contour, there are ways to measurement. But even after you measure it, if that measurement is past 200 feet, then 200 feet is the default limitation of the public beach. There's no ifs, ands, buts, or about it. And if you'll go to a document here that's exhibit number 9. Exhibit number 9 we obtained at a Freedom of Information request to the General Land Office. We wanted some documentation. They did not provide the documentation, and Mr. Polsky then threatened a contempt action against the commissioner. And all of a sudden, we got this flood of information. And this is one of the documents that we got from the General Land Office. And this is the most clear-cut way to determine the LOV as ever can be seen. But this particular publication has never been disseminated by the General Land Office, has never been provided to Cameron County, and the reason it hasn't been provided because it's too simple to follow. But if you'll read through the LOV,
that's simple to follow?
Well, yes, it's a simple. You answer yes and no's, and in every instance, when you follow the line down, Commissioner, you come down.
Yeah, but you're dealing with an administrative agency that interprets each one of those yes and no's according to what their interpretation of policy is that determines a yes or a no.
Well, you know, the first question is the area in question has some vegetation? I mean, that's, you know, some versus no, that's pretty vague, I know, you know.
Yeah.
But it's definite that there is no constant line of vegetation. There is definite fact that it has been obliterated. And if you follow the lines down, it goes down to the 200 feet line of vegetation determination, and that is the extent of the public beach. Right. So that 200 feet then is the default line of vegetation and also the default boundary of the public beach.
Where do you, in looking at this, and again, this is the administrative code, it's not statute, it's basically code that gets changed from time to time.
The next page over is a natural resource code that tells about the same 200-foot limitation. The next exhibit over.
10? Is that 10?
2B?
2B.
2B.
That's a natural resource code 61016 and 61017. And again, in both instances, the limitation to the public beach in areas obliterated or lacking of vegetation is 200 feet. And it's that 200 feet that the GLO is not going to recognize come hell or high water and has refused to do so in the case of Mr. Polsky and the Seabreeze.
I want to interject here from my experience. I was on site when the General Land Office was out doing their preliminary line of vegetation determination, and they used a handheld GPS. In that conversation, I was present, Mr. Javier Mendez was present with the GLO staff, and they recognized that, do you have the exhibit of the aerial? They recognized and admitted that this particular site is in a historic washover area. In other words, the statute that he's citing specifically addresses the area. As you'll see to the west of the road, you'll see water. That is a washover area, so it falls within the purview of the statute, 61.016, 61.017.
And what does that statute say?
It tells basically about the limitation of the 200-foot.
Look back to it.
If
It
you
goes
go-
back?
Yeah, you have it, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
We're
looking
throwing it all
exhibit-
at you.
I'm looking at 5.
Look at 2B.
Okay, yeah, but I'm looking at 5, because that's where it says TNRC 61.106.
All right, well, you're getting a little bit ahead of us,
Oh,
but
I'm
if you
sorry.
want to go there.
No.
All right.
Go ahead.
Now, ask me what the GLO wants in the form of an LOB, go to Exhibit 5. They want a 300-foot line of vegetation determination, and Exhibit 5 is a letter from Angela Sunley, the Coastal Resource Leader. And then, if you will, go to Exhibit 5A. 5A is the aerial that they use as their justification of 300 feet.
Where do they say 300 feet on that Exhibit 5?
Well, you have to look at the 5A aerial, and that's where the 300 is.
But it's not in the letter?
No, sir. They just make reference to this aerial. Now, keeping in mind, the rules say that if there is not a definite line of vegetation, you can get some vegetation on one side, you can find some vegetation on the other, or the average of contours.
Well, how far do you have to go when you're looking at finding vegetation on
It
each
just says
side?
one side or the other. It doesn't put any limitation on that. So in 5A, what you see 3 reference points. Those are a specific contour. They're all to one side of the property. They're not even on both sides of the property.
And the property is where? To the left of that one mark?
It's right on top of the 300. Yeah.
So there's no line on the other side?
No, there's no line on the other side. It's, that area, just like I showed you in the big aerial, that's the obliteration area due to the washovers caused by the hurricanes.
So that place has been washed over already before?
Several times.
Why would you want to build there?
Well, that's the necessity of the retaining wall and holding, well, the whole island's been washed over.
No, but it's washed over further.
Yeah.
It's over further. It's not where it's being built.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Now, so this is the aerial, this is the information that the General Land Office supplied as their cause for the 300 foot. Now, number 1, your line of vegetation is supposed to be a measurement off of mean low tide. If you look at the aerial here in 5A, there's no mean low tide designation. All they measure is from the edge of water. Mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is they take all the points.
Well, it depends on when they did that.
The rules, mean low tide, that's the baseline. Everything starts from mean low tide.
But
how do you designate that?
How do we know that they did not measure that at mean low tide?
Because any surveyor would have marked that as mean low tide.
So there's an actual spot where there would be a line saying mean low tide?
Yes, in Mr. Holdar's survey on exhibit number 4, you see a dotted line on the far right side that says mean low tide of a minus 1.02 feet, right there.
That's where everything begins on the right?
That's where everything begins except for the GLO.
So what you're saying is on this other 5A that they're just using the water line to measure the 300?
Right.
But does the 300 matter if they're using the line of vegetation?
But they're not using a line of vegetation. There is no constant line of vegetation on both sides to pick from. And even if there were, the rules say the limitation of the beach is 200 feet. See, they're drawing a contour, even though there's not points on just one side, they're just extrapolating that line forward, and that's their 300 feet.
But when they say 300, where's their starting point?
The water line.
Well, so wouldn't it matter where the water is when you mark the 300?
That's why an engineer or surveyor will determine, as the mean low tide, that's a measurable elevation point, not just the water's edge on a particular day at a particular tide schedule.
By statute, Commissioner, that's the benchmark for determining any measurements would be from mean low tide or mean high tide. And
Right,
that's
but
defined in statute.
But I guess my question is, when they come up, where does it say 300 feet in their letter?
It's not in the letter, it's only on the aerial. On 5A, it shows the 300 feet, Commissioner, in the aerial photo.
But how do you know where that 300-foot mark is? I mean, do they ping something?
No,
I mean,
They
took an aerial photograph, and they took the GPS marks they had, and they just took the water line that was there at that time of that aerial photograph that they had on their files and used that as a benchmark. The point is that they didn't follow statute and determined by mean low tide the extent of the public beach easement or the line of vegetation. 2 points in question here. One would be the extent of public beach, and then to transpose that into the line of vegetation for this construction permit consideration. And the fact is, the GLO's determination is inaccurate in their form of doing it. Mr. Holdar's survey is the only accurate instrument or document that we could consider at that time because it's certified by a professional engineer. This illustration they give by a Google Earth photograph and then a handheld GPS is completely inaccurate. It's just not anything the committee could use as a determining document when considering this application. We have to take and go by the certified registered document provided to us by the engineer. So the two things in question are the exactness of the certified survey that we have, and then the exhibit that you're looking at in 5A, which is just somebody's interpretation looking at an unknown period of time of a photograph of the beach and the water line that's irrelevant to the consideration of this application.
And if you look, go back to 5A and you see some little bitty print in the far left corner. Please note it. You can't read it, so you have to go to 5B. So if you read 5B.
The print on the bottom?
Yeah, go to 5B, which blows it up. Now again, this is from the General Land Office's determination of 300 feet, and it says the Texas General Land Office makes no representations or warranties regarding the accuracy or completeness of the information depicted on this map or the data from which it was produced. This map is not suitable for navigational purposes and does not purport to depict or establish boundaries between private and public lands. So it's of no use.
well, they're saying that this is not a plotted,
Yeah.
so you can't rely on it. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, but that's what they want us, that's what they want you to rely on, is something that they say is unreliable. We'd like to go ahead, if we're through with the line of vegetation, talk about retaining walls just a little bit. All right, wait, we're going to back up just one more time. Go to Exhibit 6. Angela Edwards, just south of us, just a little bit, received a line of vegetation from this court at 200 feet in 2009. And you can see that there's hardly a hair's difference between what Seabreeze is and what Angela Edwards is.
Could it be that it's a cement piece that's causing the problem?
No, no. What's different between now and then is there were some different people in the office. And we see that more often than not, as different personnel go into that office, attitudes change. And right now, the attitudes of the people that are holding those offices that we deal with are not kind to any type of development. But let's go to retaining walls if we can. What is retaining wall and what function does it purpose? Number one, a retaining wall does not push back the ocean in any way. That's not its purpose. A retaining wall is simply there to retain the property around the house. Now, as you all know, that FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Association, they have certain limits or restrictions on what elevations you need to build at for your house. In this area where we're at, the first 4 elevations at 13 feet. Now, there's only one way you can get to 13 feet. You can either build on stilts, or you can retain the property underneath your house. And that's what all the beachfront development currently within the city of South Padre Island uses. They retain the property underneath the homes. The stilt type construction is not even allowed within the city of South Padre Island. But we've heard the General Land Office in front of this court about 2 years ago, Angela Sunley said that's the kind of construction she wanted to see north, were the homes on stilts. A home on stilt with a gravel driveway and no pool, that's what she wanted to see. So why do we have retaining walls? Basically, the retaining wall is to retain the property underneath the house to get to that federal mandated elevation, and also to keep your property from sloughing off to your neighbors. So the General Land Office wants no retaining walls unless it's 200 feet back. So you can build your house, but if your house is closer than 200 feet to the LOB, the retaining wall has to be back. There is not one single property within the city of South Padre Island that has ever requested a retaining wall and ever been denied. And in fact, there was a developer on South Padre Island who wanted to build a series of homes that actually went onto the public beach. The city permitted it. The GLO came down and threatened all this stuff. And what does happen? The city amends their hail line, which is a building line. Prior, you had a building line like that within the South Padre Island. Now it's like this. They amended that line, and the GLO certified it. So
what did you call it? A what line?
The hail line, the HR hail line, was a line drawn in the sand back, I believe it was 81 or so, by the by the Attorney General's office. And it guaranteed a 200-foot public beach within the city of South Padre Island. And if you refer to Exhibit 8, page 3, it tells about the hail line, and it says that it will provide a minimum of 200 feet of open beach above the mean low tide according to the available data then.
Where's that? Where's
8, Exhibit 8, page 3. It's that first.
Oh, the first
right,
one.
Yes, sir, in yellow there.
I was counting 3 pages into the exhibit, okay?
Anyway, so this was an agreement that was written between the South Padre Island at the time and the Attorney General's land. The Attorney General. It was not adjudicated, it was just agreed to, okay? So once that hail line was established, guaranteeing 200 feet, then anybody, they could build their retaining walls at the 200 feet, they could build their homes at the 200 feet, they could do any type of construction they wanted to behind that 200 feet. But what the General Land Office wants is, of course they don't want to recognize the 200 feet, but they want a retaining wall to be an additional 200 feet back. If you had that within the city of South Padre Island, 75% of all those homes in construction on Gulf Boulevard would not be developed or built. And I can say that with authority because as Doyle, I also served for 6 years on the city of South Padre Island's Board of Aldermen. I was there when the beach and dune regs and rules came into place, and I know what was involved in the process of determining all this. The city of South Padre Island gets to do whatever they want.
Well, but in there it says it says construction that would provide a minimum of 200 feet of open beach above the mean low tide line according to then available data. So isn't it the same thing, 200 feet from mean low tide?
Yes. So they were guaranteed 200 feet, and that's what we're asking the same today, is the same 200 feet, and it's the same as dictated in the TAC rules and the Natural Resource Code, the limitation of the 200 feet, but the General Land Office will not recognize it.
So when you're talking about the hail line,
Yes, ma'am.
you say that their plan has been amended. Was it amended prior to their getting, building past the 200 feet?
It was
closer
amended, if you look on that same exhibit, Exhibit 8, page 5, in January of 2005, it talks about the amendment to that hail line, allowing for the construction of those townhomes, and then it also talks about the certification of the General Land Office of that plan amendment.
Let me interject here, Commissioner. What's of relevance here is this line was drawn in the sand, referenced as the hail line. It's not necessarily a historic building line because there's nothing on the island that old, but essentially it was a building line that was agreed to by the Attorney General and the City of South Padre Island. And the issue is that the committee looked at, we have presented to you and you've adopted a plan that exceeds and is greater than what the hail line is today in the City of South Padre Island. Mr. Nixon referenced that there was mistakes made on permitting the La Quinta and some other properties south. And I served in some of the, when I was an alderman, I did approve some permits that were on the hail line, but still they were less than 200 feet from the water, let alone mean low tide.
Is that why they moved the line? Because they were less than 200?
No, that was a separate issue. That's a long-winded example there, but the point is the city amended their plan according to what they wanted to do.
Right, but in the amendment of that plan, when you said they did this, did the furthest edge over here, did that still allow 200 feet from low mean tide?
I can't speak to that. All I know is that it was seaward of the previously agreed building line.
The point that we looked at when we were considering this application is all that evidence, and that's why the plan amendment that we work with today for the county actually gives greater protection to public beach area than the hail line does today. The point that we considered is that, yes, the GLO has said there's been variances or we've done different things. The GLO can issue variances. They simply give comments or no comments to the city's permit applications and allow the permits. You have a question?
But you're not saying that a variance is needed here by the GLO. You're saying that where he's at is still within the 200, is beyond the 200 feet.
We're asking you for a variance according to the county's newly adopted plan that has not been certified by the General Land Office yet, even though you did that last August. This commission did. The point I'm making here is if the General Land Office has worked historically since 1994 approving permits within the City of South Padre Island, knowing full well that the majority and a good many of those were in much less area than 200 feet from mean low tide and encroaching the hail line encroaching the public beach easement by that minimum definition of 200 feet. And so each time a permit would come up, they just, oh, well, we'll leave my interpretation, what I experienced was a blind eye. A blind eye, okay, here's the hail line. They can build on it, but we'll forget that it's less than 200 feet from the line of vegetation, let alone mean low tide. The reference and the question is, when the application we're considering today is, that application is much further, though it's what's been permitted and continually permitted south of the city limits. And that's where we have issues and have recommended the amendment to the plan which was adopted.
Okay, I'm a little confused. Hold on. Low mean tide, then you got 200 feet. And where can you build from that 200-foot mark?
according to the general land office, you have to be, the retaining wall has to be an additional 200 feet back.
Okay. And according to our county plan, that's effective right now, not the one that's, we're waiting to get approved.
200 feet from the line of vegetation.
So it's from low mean tide, then it's 400 feet.
Right.
Correct.
Your new plan that you've adopted basically will allow you a retaining wall at 255 feet from mean low tide. The 200 feet of the public beach and the remaining 75 feet for the construction of the erosion protection dune system that's to run parallel to the beach and be as a means of stopping the erosion and the beach.
And so what you're saying is right now in the city, or what they've gotten permitting for, is they don't have to be at the 400 feet. They just have to be on the other side of what's been determined to be the hail line.
That is the question, is how they would do that. And the point is, they have consistently done that, not just once, but subsequently. They have taken and approved permit after permit and not objected as they're objecting to today, because the city of South Padre Island is still bound by the same regulation as the county is. And if they want to enforce the regulation of that 200 feet from line of vegetation, and by virtue that the hail line is the building line, that is the line of vegetation agreed to, then there shouldn't be anything within the next 200 feet. It's just a bass-backwards way of thinking. The point is, the General Land Office looks at the properties or permits south of the city limits one way and look at it differently and don't enforce equally.
There are no exemptions in the TAC rules or the Natural Resource Code for any exemptions to the city of South Padre Island. They should be following the same rules as the county is. And when they come down, when the GLO comes down and say no pools, Cameron County, they ought to be saying no pools city. GLO says your retaining wall should be 200 feet back from the LOV. In South Padre Island, your retaining wall will be 200 feet.
So basically what you're saying is the county, not the county necessarily, but the owners of property
North of the
outside of the city limits of South Padre Island are being discriminated against by the GLO.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's, you know, for us, of course, it's development, property, and all of that. But for the owners of these property, you know, we live in a property rights state, or I thought we did. You know, property rights advocates are a big issue with us. That's been, you know, people have the right to do certain things with their property. And if you lose property, I think Galveston went through it, especially after the last hurricane, you know, where things got washed and homes got, you know, whether they could rebuild or not, where they were. But, you know, if you can't or won't allow someone to build and move their property line, you're basically, you're doing a taking. Exactly. And a taking by the state has to be reimbursable to the property owner.
You're exactly correct, Commissioner, and I don't want this to be perceived as a sour grapes county versus South Padre Island. That's not it at all. We're not saying that we're not envious of what they have. The point is, the county has given full consideration and spent an enormous amount of time looking at all the data, all the information, and have amended their plan to be a very functioning document. And the point is that the General Land Office has exceeded their time for either approving or disapproving our plan, August to February of the year before to now.
What is their time limit?
180 days.
And if
180 days to, that's the key point, the 180 days to consider any line of, dune protection line amendment, which we did, is part of it, so they had 180 days to consider that.
And what happens if they don't act?
They got another 180 days.
That's the issue. They come in at the 179th day and send a letter making a comment, and they figure that resets the clock. We just ask them, you know, come on, guys, let's talk about it. Let's do it. Let's work out any differences. And went with some of the staff to the GLO and had a great sit-down with them for 7 hours. And we accomplished a little bit, but my head came out bloody from beating it against the wall because we really couldn't get them to sit down and really discuss the key points we wanted. We couldn't really move off the line of vegetation. When we said, here's the facts, we're citing your own rules and we're citing this resource code, please look at it.
Well, but you're looking at two different points in the statute. They're looking at determining line of vegetation by looking at other spots and connecting lines. And you're saying that according to which is the one that has a statute? 2?
But in every one of those, in 2A and 2B, there still is a 200-foot limitation.
Well, but I don't know. Well, let's look at 2A. 2A says if there's no clearly marked line of vegetation, the line of vegetation delineating the public beach shall be the line of constant elevation connecting two clearly marked lines of vegetation of equal elevation on each side. But if there are no clearly marked lines of vegetation on each side, the line of vegetation shall not extend inland further than 200 feet from the seaward line of mean low tide. Well, the question hinges on if there are no clearly marked lines of vegetation on each side. Well, how far do you have to look? Because if you look far enough, you're going to find vegetation on both sides.
I don't think you're supposed to use binoculars. I think you're supposed to be able to look right next to the property.
Well, but where does it say that?
You have to assume they're using binoculars because if you look at that delineation they made with all the points on one side and none of the points on the other, they could easily say, well, there is another point down there half a mile.
Commissioner, I think the important part is here, based on our history of working with the General Land Office, and originally the county did the lines of vegetation determinations, and then subsequently the General Land Office has been given that authority, and we submit all of our predeterminations to them, and they either agree or disagree. We've used the exact method you're talking about and used some reasonableness in there because it was not stated in the statute. Statute in turn dictates how Texas Administrative Code will be written. So that's how TAC was written to reflect the Natural Resource Code, Chapter 61. Even I, as a fellow that rides horses for a living, can pretty well understand Chapter 61 Natural Resource Code. And common sense we used in doing our line of vegetation determinations was we would look north, we would look south. We, the committee, we would go on site. We do that today. We actually go down on site and we look at it.
You put a stake up or something?
No, we don't need to do that. We work with the survey provided to us.
You might disturb the area if you do that.
We use the survey provided to us as the only legal instrument that we can really document, we can really consider. And then we look in the form of taking other things in factor in consideration. Is this a historical washover? Is this a natural line of vegetation? All the mitigating factors associated to that determination when it's made. The point being made here is there has been a history of various line of vegetations approved by the General Land Office, even less than 200 feet from mean low tide. The example is Hilton Gardens. We sat right down there with the General Land Office, sat down there at pool deck of the La Quinta when they had the permit. We looked at the survey and we looked down there and said, well, there's a line of vegetation, and it was less than 200 feet from mean low tide, which is provided for in Chapter 61 of the Natural Resource Code and TAC, Chapter 15. The question coming in and what we're here trying to present to you is the inconsistencies in doing a line of vegetation determination. It's not that difficult.
And before we move off of it, again, you asked me why or how does the General Land Office come to some of these conclusions. Angela Edwards, just next door to Seabreeze, the General Land Office had no problems with the 200 feet. The staff in that office at that time, and since they had no problems with it, you didn't have any problems issuing the permit. But now there's new staffing into that office, and now they got a big problem with it.
Could it be the type of structures that were put up, maybe that?
They're
is-
identical. If you look at the map I showed you of Angela Edwards, who is in 6, Exhibit 6, you have Seabreeze at the top and Angela Edwards down at the bottom, and there's no difference.
And Commissioner Sanchez, lawyer, you made a keen observation. How far do you look in order to establish a line of vegetation? And the statute doesn't define it, as you keenly pointed out. But when you look at Angela Edwards' property, she has the same collision mark vegetation, or actually lack of vegetation, on her property. It's about 1,500 foot south, and the GLO went out there, gave her that 200 foot based on her collision mark line of vegetation. So they obviously didn't look beyond what was right there in front of them on Angela Edwards' property. I think that's a good analogy.
So they measured from mean low tide for her?
Yes.
Is that how they gave
Mr.
approval?
Holt, that permit was supplied to us with a survey from Mr. Holdar also. We used that same document for the consideration of that line of vegetation determination for that application.
But again, before we get off of the line of vegetation, you ask me why are they doing this? Please go to exhibit number 10. There's a fellow by the name of Tom Tepper that has property between Seabreeze and Angela. Now, he asked for a line of vegetation determination, and if you look at 10A, that's the determination they came up with, and basically the line in red is at 285 feet. Now, it's an infrared photo, so it's only the vegetation is a dark red. There is no vegetation up there whatsoever, but what's really revealing is Exhibit 10. And I told you about this document.
Hold on. You said red lines, but I'm not.
The red line going north to south.
Along the water, the squiggly line?
It goes through lot 6.
Okay.
That's where they determined the LOV to be for Mr. Tepper. Measures about 285 feet.
So it's more than 200 feet?
Yeah.
So it's 285 feet from low mean tide?
Yes, for him, Angela to the right of him was 200, Seabreeze to the left of him, they want 300. But why? Why are they thinking like this? Please go to exhibit number 10. This is a document that we got in that document dump. This is a correspondence between Dave Palmer, who was a beach specialist at the time, to the Beach and Dune and legal staff. Now, to me, this is the most revealing document that we've been able to uncover as to the mindset of the people, of the staff in the department. You look in paragraph number 2 in the yellow, it talks about how that legal may have a problem with the determination they've made. Well, legal shouldn't have a thing to do with it. It should be a black and white issue. You follow the flow chart, the line of vegetation down. What does legal have anything to do with it? And then you go into read, please, number 3. They have problems with this determination, and they're fearful that the county, I think the sentence is, an attitude of finding any justification necessary to deprive the landowner of a legitimate space. I mean, we're supposed to be determining line of vegetation. Why is legal sending points back to staff? It should be clear-cut, black and white, and it's not. There's a mindset that's developed into that office right now.
Can you go over that piece again?
Okay. This was a memo written by Dave Palmer.
Okay.
Dave Palmer was a staff specialist who was doing the line of vegetation for determination for Mr. Tepper. This is an internal document. This is not a document they sent to Tom Tepper. This is an internal GLO document that came from Dave Palmer, the specialist, to legal, with his concerns about the line of vegetation that he wants to lay in there. Tom Tepper was making the assertion that the line of vegetation should be at 200 feet. And number 1, it says, I prepared a draft letter with language rejecting the 200 feet as a maximum default. and taken the total of vegetation line and historic use data. Recommended the line extrapolating from the best quality vegetation points along South Padre Island. So the line he's referencing to is that red line that goes to that lot 6. That's the red line he wants to put in. And he says in number 2, the line measured in 2007 represents the best quality of vegetation. Red line on the map. In staffing this alternative last year, however, the distance of the measured points from the Tepper tract was an issue from the legal staff. And this is exactly what Commissioner Sanchez is referring to, because the rules say you measure vegetation on one side or the other. You don't measure it a quarter of a mile down the beach on one side and a half a mile on the other. So here he's saying it's an issue from where these points are derived from. And it goes on, it says, I subsequently measured points much closer to the Tepper tract, but the vegetation quality was degraded compared to the March 8 points and therefore was placed further landward. They didn't want to measure anything too close. Then it goes on in number 3, he says, I have some qualms with mentioning the historic use data in the formal position letter. I can see the county and the applicant taking the position that the attempt by the General Land Office to find any evidence whatsoever, and only one point at that, only one point of vegetation were they finding on one side, just like Seabreeze, as an attitude of finding any justification necessary to deprive the landowner of legitimate space.
Or a taking, basically.
Yes, sir, a takings. And it goes on, there is also a problem with consistency. The March 8 points can be applied consistently. I know that there is not enough data to apply the historic use data consistently. Better to use the historic use data in court if necessary. And then he goes on, if the March 8 points are accepted, the map will be updated to show only the red line. This is not the mindset of the people in Austin I want working for me. I want a person that can go out there and scientifically measure that line of vegetation, make that determination according to the flow chart, and stick to it. I don't want to have to go to the legal department and say, can we cover our butts on this? That's not right. South Padre Island certainly doesn't have to do it, so why should Mr. Polsky and every landowner north of that city limit sign have to go through the same thing?
I have a question. What would you say is the financial impact of the GLO's treatment of Mr. Polsky?
Funny you should ask. Please go to Exhibit 14.
Get in ahead of us.
At the top of the page there, I have broken out, and I have some experience in this, not only being in construction, but also in real estate and also in banking. But I point out here that developed, the way he wants to develop with a 200-foot LOV, with retaining walls, swimming pools, and brick pavers, he's looking at lot sales of $2.5 to $3 million. Total build out with construction of $5 to $7 million. However, if it's restricted per what the General Land Office wants to do, meaning that there is no retaining wall, that the LOV is at 300 feet, that there's no pools, no pavers, probably you're looking at lot sales now of $500,000 to $700,000 with a total development of $1 to $1.5 million. So just on his 150 feet of beachfront, we're talking about a difference of $4 to $5 million of values either lost or gained, and that's a decision you'll be making today. If you go to the next page, 14A, what is the financial impact to the county? At the very top, again, Seabreeze with 150 feet. If it's totally developed as we want to develop it, your taxes per year is a little over $26,000. If it's a restricted development, how the GLO wants it, it's a little over $5,000. Now, Seabreeze is only 150 feet. But what's coming to you pretty soon is Cameron Acquisitions with 8,000 feet of beachfront. So if you want to extrapolate his 150 feet values to now the 8,000 feet of values, look at the bottom. If developed, the 8,000 feet of sea breeze, you're looking at total taxes to the county of $1.4 million. If the 8,000 feet of sea breeze, of Cameron
acquisition
is developed according to what the general land office, you're only talking taxes to the county about $300,000. So about 75% less in taxes to the county, countywide. Now go over one more page. If we can go from 150 feet to 8,000 feet, why can't we look at the whole 6 miles north of the city limits to the end of the county road? Then you have totally developed, extrapolating today's values on that entire 6 miles, a total development of $1.4 billion with anticipated revenues to the county of $5.6 million. If it has to be restricted development, you're looking at $315 million evaluation and county taxes of 1.1. And when I say restricted development, all you're going to end up with is a long series of houses on stilts. You're not going to have any beachfront hotels. You're not going to have any condominiums. All you're going to have is something similar to what's on the south side of the jetties, of the cut. You're going to have people that don't need a driveway. They got a four-wheeler or the four-wheel drive. They don't need a swimming pool. They don't care about the retaining wall. They'll build their house on stilts and that'll be it. But you know who does care? The county just passed not too long ago the TERS #2 that includes all of this area. When this second causeway is built, you're going to have money coming from the public, you're going to have money coming from the private. Now, honestly, there's not going to be that much coming from the public. The TERS 2 will provide some, but you can see what the difference is as far as income into the county if the development is restricted. And then I ask you, the biggest part of the money is going to come from a private investment group, and they're going to look at a return on their money coming from tolls. Now, those tolls have to be collected, but before people are willing to pay the tolls, they have to have a reason to get there. They're not building that second causeway for just what's there within the city of South Padre Island. And I can tell you David Alex and Pete Sepulveda are selling the idea to potential investors that you're going to see the same development north as you do in the south. They're surely not going to go to an investment group from Japan or Hong Kong or wherever and say, look, we want your money, but all we're going to be building there are some houses on stilts. That's not going to happen.
Let me ask a question before you go any further. Based on the fact that I was going to bring up the second causeway, based on what the development has been and where it's going and where we see it going, I'm sure that South Padre Island, I'm not sure whether they're a home rule city or what they are, how they're able to expand their city limit, but I'm sure they have big plans about annexing further and further up the north end of the beach. Let's assume that they are able to annex in increments, whatever allowed by law. Once they annex, now that property becomes inside the city of South Padre Island. Does that hail line continue with them?
The hail line stops basically where it is right now. It would have to be redrawn.
Even if it becomes part of the city?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a future consideration the city would take that we can't address. You know, that's the options they have to redraw the hail line. But the point I think you're getting to is the hail line essentially dumps into the water about Andy Buoy. So it just gets out into the ocean, so it no longer exists for permitting purposes. Commissioners, you've been very indulgent. I appreciate this. We've given you the evidence that we've been working with, and that was in the form of the GLO's letter of line of vegetation determination, and their aerial exhibit depicting where they thought it was. They gave you we gave you their method of making that determination. We also have represented that we have a survey that we use, a certified survey by a certified engineer. For the record, if you would like to hear from the engineer, he's here to give you his testimony as to his qualifications and his method of finding it, or if you're ready to accept as we did as a committee, that we were looking at a legitimate document for our consideration, the same document we're asking you to look at today. I'm leaving that to you.
Thank you, Doyle. I just have a few comments and some questions. And you brought.
If it has to do with the LOB, could we introduce Mr. Hodar and let him enter?
Well, no, it's got nothing to do with the LOB. Okay. I just want to know, what was passed out to us was photographs of other subdivisions. One was Cibola.
That's Angela Edwards.
Right. The Paez, several of them. Mr. Polsky's, and then I believe you mentioned Mr. Tepper. You mentioned all these. I remember the Miss Edwards' subdivision very, very clearly. Can you tell us what the differences are when GLO gave that particular subdivision the green light to do this, and how it differs from what they are not willing to do or can do for Mr. Polsky's subdivision?
Can I show you?
I'll answer your question real quick. Specifically, it's different staff. When we presented that permit application to the GLO, different staff people looked at it with us on the Cibola application. And that was the GLO, or the county's LOB determination, which the GLO has the capacity to make comments on, and they agreed with the county's line of vegetation determination for that Cibola permit.
So just quick and dirty, the law the law as it's written right now, that the current GLO staff is telling us that there is a violation. Is that the same law that was in place when Angela Edwards' subdivision was done?
Yes, sir.
So what you're suggesting then is because you have a few other people there that are not there, that weren't there a couple of years ago, they're interpreting this a little bit differently? So is this just interpretation?
That has been our experience, yes, sir.
Okay. And we mentioned about, and I agree that just because we've entertained another plan, we're still working under the old plan, the old dune protection plan, right?
Yes.
Okay. And even though we've submitted an amended plan, GLO has yet to act on it, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So if we move forward with the granting of this variance, is it in violation of the law?
That would be a.
I'm going to answer that. I like to be heard on that.
I think it's a simple yes or no.
It's not a simple yes or no.
Is it in violation?
Determined by a judge.
No, but right now, as written.
In my opinion, no, and it will be determined by a Cameron County District Court judge, because if you grant me the dune protection permit that I want, I will, on the day after you grant it to me, file a declaratory judgment action in District Court in Cameron County, naming Cameron County as a respondent and asking the District Court judge to state that what you have given me is legal, regardless of what the GLO says. I will also bring in the GLO and a secondary count, and I will ask the court to determine why the GLO has not approved your new plan and state what they've done is arbitrary and capricious. I will not be asking for any fees and costs against Cameron County. I will against the GLO. And my position is that by granting me this permit, you're giving yourself the absolute best shot of a quick and easy settlement with the General Land Office as to the new plan. And whatever settlement Mr. Hodge can work out, or you agree to that Mr. Hodge can work out regarding the new plan and my property, I'll accept. No problem. And I'll accept it. You have my word as an officer of the court. That's give me that permit, because it's gonna give you folks the absolute best chance to get a resolution of that new plan of yours. And as part of that resolution, something may or may not be taken away from me that you've given me. That's okay. I don't have a problem with that at all. I told Mr. Hodgson, I'm telling you folks that's my position. You've gotten a lot of calls lately from the General Land Office and the AGs. They are scared to death of what's going to happen to them. I have an injunction. If they went an ex-party, that means would have me there, got a restraining order against me from building a retaining wall. Exhibit 13 shows what I have built. There's nothing else been built there that shows my property with the columns sticking up. They're suing me in Austin. Is it 13?
No.
No.
12.
12? I want to make sure you look at it. No.
12.
12A.
12A.
12A?
We're good, go.
12A? Yes. All right. Well, that's what I built. Nothing else. Now, they're saying those columns are a retaining wall. So they're suing me in Austin for it, and they got a temporary restraining order for me not to complete those columns. Now, I'm not filling in between the columns. There's nothing in that photo that will retard the sand. That'll keep the sand from blowing in and out. So they're not going to win that, but they are scared to death of you giving me this permit because it's opened up a total can of worms. They don't want a court in Cameron County determining what they've done as arbitrary and capricious. They don't want a court saying that you can, case by case, grant variances and let one person do this and that on the beach. They don't want that to happen. You all are pretty smart folks. I know you understand.
Sir, if you don't get to the microphone, people on the camera that are watching at home won't get to hear you.
All right. You're all pretty smart folks. I know that. And
That's what you wanted to get on camera.
No, the gentleman up there signaled me that they
get on camera. We're
the
pretty
gentleman
smart
taping this signaled me that they couldn't hear.
all right. Give me that permit, and I guarantee you before February 20th, you're going to get so many calls from the General Land Office and the AG that you most probably can settle mostly everything, including what you've given me. I think that's the point I'm trying to make to you folks.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
I want to answer your question, Judge.
Yeah, let me go back and ask the question again,
Yeah.
because, I mean, all that is subject to a lot of court stuff happening. But I guess the question, and maybe you can answer it, Doyle, right now as it stands, is whatever's occurred out there, is it in violation of existing law, as what GLO is telling us?
The issue would be, Judge, specifically that, is it in violation? I think you'll get testimony both ways that it is and it isn't. And that's what we have, the committee have decided that, the fact that, folks have been treated elsewhere and there's been no consideration of that law that you reference, the no retaining wall with 200 feet of line of vegetation, is ignored elsewhere. How is it applicable today? And that's what it's really going to come down to, is this committee, this commission really needs to kick this up to another level and let a court decide. Let them hear all the evidence from one side and the other side, and let that be the determining factor.
Judge, is your question to Mr. Wells is what you see in the exhibit, my columns, presently in violation of the law?
Well, obviously, there was an injunction to stop it for sign. I'm just.
But there's more than what's in there, because I was out there this weekend, and there are things between those columns. I was out there this past Friday.
There's rebar between the columns.
Well, there's something. I mean, because right there it just shows columns, but there's something between them right now.
Let me address this because I'm the builder of record in this regard. What you see here has been approved by you in December of 10. What you see here, these columns, on top of these columns is another 8 feet more of columns to be built. All this area that was trenched for the building, that's all going to be covered up. You're not going to see these columns anymore. All you're going to see are the columns built on top of the existing columns. We have a permit to build what is there. Now, as a builder, I made just like when I build a 3-story home on the island, more often than not, I will provide for the ability of the owner to put in their own elevator. Most of the homes are 3 stories. So the way I design and build a building is I build basically an elevator shaft. But in the meantime, we put in temporary floors, and those elevator shafts are now closets. So I provide for that homeowner in the future, if he wants to, he can put in that elevator. Just like this wall here, the security fence I'm building, I made the provision, whereas in the future, if it was to be permitted for a retaining wall, it could then be a retaining wall with a security fence on top.
So right now, it's not a retaining wall?
It's not retaining a bit of sand.
Okay. Now, I have a question. You said this court approved something in 2010.
Yes.
If you look at exhibit number 5, it shows a letter there, March 24th, 2010, from the General Land Office to our court counsel. And in several paragraphs, it says, the county shall not issue a permit allowing adverse effects on dunes and dune vegetation unless the applicant proves there is no practicable alternative to the proposed activity. 1. 2, the county shall require the applicant to mitigate for unavoidable adverse effects on dunes by restoring dunes to approximate the naturally formed dunes position or location, contour, volume, elevation, vegetation cover, and sediment content in the area. The applicant must clearly demonstrate in a grading and layout plan that the contours for final grade approximate the natural formed dunes and vegetative cover in the area. And it says the county shall require the applicant to mitigate on a 1-to-1 ratio for the volume of materials, cubic yards, of all disturbed areas above the 10-foot elevation contour in accordance with other permitted construction authorized by the county. The applicant must calculate the cubic volumes of materials above the 10-foot contour and demonstrate the compensatory mitigation will be conducted on a 1-to-1 basis, including cubic yards of materials, contours, elevations, location, vegetative cover. It goes on. Then the next paragraph says, the county shall not issue a permit that authorizes the applicant to pave or alter the ground within 200 feet of the line of vegetation. Okay? Next one, the county shall not issue a permit that allows the applicant to construct roads parallel to the beach within 200 feet of the natural line of vegetation. Lastly, the county shall not issue a permit that authorizes the construction of a structure that may act as a retaining wall within 200 feet of the line of vegetation. The applicant may not construct the fence if the footings or foundation of the fence constitute a retaining wall or its functional equivalent. Okay, that was sent to this Commissioner's Court March 24th, 2010. And then, so they're basically saying that this Commissioner's Court couldn't do what it did?
No, sir. No, sir. That was a comment, the letter you read is a comment letter to the application at that time. And then the permit that was issued on the 21st of December 2010, Exhibit 1D, reflected those comments. A mitigation plan was presented and reviewed and approved by the Dune Protection Committee. The same application, the same mitigation plan was presented to the General Land Office, and they signed off on the mitigation plan for the proposed work that was going to be done, specifically improving the area of the property and constructing the sand fence, and the mitigation plan, which is still in effect today. Right now, what you're seeing around there is a construction site that takes and is compensated for within the mitigation plan.
Well,
so no, sir, you're not in violation.
Well, but I understand, but there's a December 16th, 2010 letter. And again, it says the county shall not permit the building of, let me see here. Okay, the applicant may not construct the fence if the footings or foundation of the fence constitute a retaining wall or its functional equivalent.
Bottom line is, the footing's down there at the same level as the Park Road 100, to where he can get a solid footing, and then coming up with the columns, as Mr. Houston commented, then, you know, as it stands right now, the only thing he's permitted to do today is to take and fill that back in with the mitigation process, but he took the columns down to tierra firma, as is the highway or Park Road 100.
But
so that's why it is.
At the base of all these pillars, is there a constant wall?
There's
Well, there's a footer because the concrete, the columns have to sit on something.
And how big is that footer?
12 inches.
Would that be considered a retaining wall?
Not by definition.
Okay, because
Not by definition.
if what you're looking for, I think you already got it by what this court gave you December 2010. I mean, for your right to go file your declaratory judgment, by getting that permit, even though you weren't supposed to.
Let me ask one question. In between the columns, there's concrete.
Yes,
How far does that go?
just 12 inches,
How about at the column?
12 inches.
So the depth of that fence, or whatever it is, I don't know what you want to call it.
It's a footer, it's not a fence.
Well, whatever it is, you know,
12 inches.
it's 12 inches.
12 inches.
At the columns and in between the columns is 12 inches.
Everything, yeah, the footer is 12 inches tall.
So the entire span of that wall is 12 inches at the base, and then you have columns coming up.
Yes.
That's it.
Or cement in between the columns.
Let me do something real quick before we can, this is going to go on. I need to recess this meeting. I have to open up another one. So let me have a motion to recess this meeting.
So moved.
By Commissioner Hernandez, second by?
Second.
Commissioner Benavides, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, item carries. Let me open up a special meeting also today that was slated for 10 a.m. Do I hear a motion to open this meeting?
So moved.
By Commissioner Benavides, second by Commissioner Gatsa. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, item carries. Can we just go ahead and take this consent item out and take care of it?
Go ahead.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the consent? Moved by Commissioner Gatsa,
Second.
second by Commissioner Hernandez. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, item carried. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the special meeting?
So moved.
By Commissioner Benavides, second by Commissioner Gatsa. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, item carried. Do I hear a motion to
And
reopen?
that resolution was to properly fund the Texas Parks and Wildlife
Yeah.
Department and not divert money from other sources.
Right. Do I hear a motion to reconvene our regular meeting?
So moved.
By Commissioner Benavides, do I have a second? By
Second.
Commissioner Gatsa, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We are reconvened. Okay, continue. Whomever's next.
Okay, so that's the question.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, so my question was, when you got the permit from this court in 2010, what was the permit for? To do what?
To build the security fence. The security fence is detailed in Exhibit 1D.
I thought it was like 8 feet.
So you're telling me what you have, you know, like all the way around is 12 inches?
Yes.
By how wide?
In
By
some
8
places, it's 24 inches wide.
Okay, on the footing.
Yeah,
So it's 12 by,
24.
and in some places it's narrower than
Yes.
And it's similar to me in Austin saying that is a retaining wall, when it cannot retard sand at all. It's ludicrous. It's a footer, it's not a wall. A retaining wall would be when I fill the spaces between the column, between the block columns and block. Then it becomes a retaining wall.
You backfill, yeah.
So the permit that you got in 2010, what was that permit?
The permit was to build a security fence around my property with concrete block columns and probably about 12 feet apart and some aluminum slats in between the columns. Security fence around the property at the level that the houses would be built at.
So that's 13 feet above where you put this footer. So,
I need that elevation for FEMA purposes, and so I have to go up 13 feet.
Okay, so the permit as you have it right now, because you have a permit,
Yes, sir.
is to build starting at 13 feet above where the footer is that you put in. Okay. Did the permit give you authority to put in that footer and to put in the columns?
It's an exhibit.
Which one?
It's part of the exhibit.
It's in 1D, the third page over.
1D?
I don't know. If we had approved it, what's the issue?
If you approve of me to build a fence, aluminum slats, 13 feet above sea level, but you didn't, you have never given me permission to fill in those columns below the level of the houses with a concrete block, hold the sand in my property.
Because we can't.
We have-
Doesn't,
you
doesn't,
have it today.
right,
Today, see if you will give me that permit.
So you wanna fill in between the columns, is that what you're saying?
Only if we got a permit.
Yeah.
I can't do it without you folks giving me a permit to do it. I can't do it, nor will I do it, nor am I doing it.
And what you see there in front of you, Commissioner Gar, is exactly how most of the retaining walls are built within the city.
Commissioner Garza, your question to what was built there then and what it could be construed as a retaining wall or not, is really out of my hands and your hands. It's in the court's hands at this point. Again, we can go back and forth and make that assertion, but what we're seeking today is to give you the full evidence on the committee's recommendation to allow the amendment of the plan, the permit that you're looking at, to include a retaining wall.
So you're looking for an amendment from us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why would you have not requested that when we approved this for you?
Quite simply, sir, Mr. Polsky agreed to wait until the county took its time to thoroughly and accurately amend its plan to reflect what we're here talking about today. And that's what was done in last August.
And I had some very productive conversations with your very competent legal, Mr. Hodge, and we agreed, and he wanted me to wait and hold off on pushing the retaining wall issue until he and you folks had a full opportunity